Chapter 561, Return, Seeking Monthly Ticket Recommendation. Besides, these wizards were not good people, especially those Death Eaters who had left the Longbottoms in their current state. Anduin felt no moral burden in using them for his experiments. However, he had only produced 5 experimental subjects so far, which seemed insufficient. He would have to wait until he had more materials and then come back to Karkaroff to transform another batch. Thinking of this, Anduin turned his head to glance at Karkaroff, who had finally regained some strength. The man looked as if he had just run a marathon, his face pale and devoid of blood. "How are you feeling? Has your magic power recovered?" Anduin asked, handing him another bottle of tonic. "Thank you for your concern, my lord. I have recovered quite a bit. We should continue," Karkaroff replied, his face showing a hint of bitterness. Continuously casting the Cruciatus curse had been a significant burden for him, and he was genuinely afraid of Anduin's request to continue. Anduin smiled slightly at Karkaroff's evident fear. "Let's stop here for today. We don't need to continue until the materials are exhausted." Every time Anduin indifferently referred to the captive wizards as materials, Karkaroff couldn't help but shudder. Becoming Anduin's enemy seemed to have consequences far worse than death. Anduin, however, paid no mind to Karkaroff's thoughts. He simply reminded him, "Next, take an ice back to Durmstrang, and don't forget what I told you when you return." "Yes, my lord. After I return, I will immediately search for properties in the local wizarding area. Thanks to your support, Jacobson trusts me very much now. Their patriarch even interviewed me personally the day before yesterday. I can assure you that your business will not face any harassment in Norway," Karkaroff said, his confidence bolstered by the absence of the Death Eaters and the support of the Jacobson family. Anduin had originally planned to expand the business of Silver Flash Trading Company to Northern Europe. However, the region's atmosphere, which rejected non-pure-blood wizards, made it difficult for him, a Muggle-born, to ensure smooth business operations. Therefore, he urgently needed a local agent with enough influence. Anduin had previously targeted Karkaroff, hoping to use his position as Durmstrang's vice principal for protection. Now, with Karkaroff expected to be promoted to full principal and having established connections with the Jacobson family, Anduin's expansion plans seemed more secure. In fact, Anduin had considered this link when formulating his Nordic action plan. Provoking the Pure Land Club to merge with the club not only intensified the conflict between local Nordic forces and the Silver Spear, but also further weakened the club's strength. This strategy cleared obstacles and allowed Silver Flash Trading Company to enter the market quickly, effectively killing 3 birds with 1 stone. "Very good," Anduin nodded in satisfaction at Karkaroff's confidence. He didn't forget to dangle a carrot in front of him. "As long as my business can enter the Nordic market smoothly, you will be the agent for the entire Nordic branch of Silver Flash Trading Company. You will also receive a share of the firm's profits in Northern Europe, tentatively set at 5%. If you perform well, your benefits will be even greater in the future." "Yes, thank you, sir, for trusting me," Karkaroff said, unable to hide his elation. He knew how popular Silver Flash Trading Company's products were. In the past, Northern Europe could only acquire these products through smuggling merchants. The stakes were high. If he could master this channel in the future, his status within both the Durmstrang and Jacobson families would be assured and more stable. "Well, that's all for today. Let's head back," Anduin said, leading Karkaroff out of the forest and back to the suitcase. Outside, Azalea had been waiting with Anais for a long time. When Anais looked at Anduin again, her eyes were filled with gratitude instead of confusion. "Mr. Wilson, my sister has told me about her relationship with you. Thank you for taking care of us. I will definitely repay you in the future," Anais said, bowing deeply to Anduin. Anduin wasn't sure how Azalea had explained their relationship to her sister, but he smiled slightly. "I'm just fulfilling my promise. You don't have to be so polite. But remember one thing. Don't mention your sister and me to anyone when you go back. Can you do that?" "My sister has already explained that to me. Don't worry. I won't cause you any trouble. I will pretend I have never seen you," Anais responded obediently. "That's good," Anduin said, turning to Karkaroff. "It's getting late. You should take Anais to school to avoid arousing suspicion." "Yes, Karkaroff responded respectfully. He stepped forward, placed Anais on his shoulder, and disappeared instantly. My lord, I didn't mention much about you to Anais. I just said that you saved my life during a difficult time, and that I am now working under you, Azalea explained softly after the two had left. You don't need to explain so much to me. I trust you know how to handle things, Anduin replied, smiling at Azalea. Now that Anais' illness is cured, I think you can be at ease. I've also told Karkaroff to take good care of her at school, so don't worry too much. Thank you, my lord, for your concern, Azalea nodded gratefully. The matter of her younger sister had been her biggest worry, and she hadn't expected Anduin to be so trustworthy and directly help remove Anais' curse. With a new sense of relief, Azalea asked in a low voice, Now that we have understood the situation in Northern Europe, what should we do next? Should we return to Germany? Yes, Anduin nodded nonchalantly. We will set off immediately. Although the club shouldn't receive news of the Wicked Bird's destruction anytime soon, once they do, your identity will become very sensitive. For Jin Facia and others, you should be considered a missing person. You can't appear in public for now, or it will cause trouble for you and your sister. Until the club is completely dealt with, you will live in my suitcase and help me take care of the magical animals. Yes, Azalea agreed, knowing Anduin was right. She was originally an employee of the Department of Management and Control of Fantastic Beasts, so taking care of magical animals was part of her job. She would follow the public mission assigned to her by the Ministry of Magic. After instructing Azalea on some precautions, Anduin let her return to the suitcase space. He then picked up the suitcase and flew south. This time, he hadn't prepared extra port keys or reported to the local Ministry of Magic, so he had to fly back directly. The journey would take at least a day and a night. Because of this, the club would never suspect Thunderbird, as Thunderbird had already used a port key to travel to and from Northern Europe. There was no other way to move over such a long distance, so the Thunderbird that had shown its face in the ashes of the fire snake would not be a suspect in the attack on Wicked Bird and others. 2 days later, the German Auror safe house was a place of tense anticipation. Anduin, who had just returned from Northern Europe, appeared once more, while Andre and Moody had been waiting in the reception room for quite some time. After the successful completion of Operation Concentric Circle, a joint effort with the Ministries of Magic from 2 countries, and the private looting operation Anduin had conducted in Northern Europe, it was time to advance their strategy against the Silver Spear. Anduin, have you heard? Andre asked eagerly as soon as Anduin entered the living room. The Nordic Pure Land Society and the Silver Spear fought fiercely in Norway, and the Pure Land Society suffered heavy losses. Now, various official organizations in Northern Europe have issued a joint statement to comprehensively sanction all activities of the Silver Spear Club. They've even issued a bounty across Europe for the Silver Spear. Any individual wizard or organization in Europe that brings in the head of a Silver Spear member can receive a bounty from Northern Europe. It's said that the total amount is as high as 1,000 galleons. This is really a big deal, Andre muttered mockingly. In his eyes, anything that could bring misfortune to the Silver Spear was good news. Although he didn't know the exact details, the Nordic authorities' boycott of the Silver Spear Club was a positive development. I heard, Anduin replied calmly. I have another piece of gossip. It's said that those Silver Spear members killed the principal of Durmstrang's School of Magic, which enraged the Nordic authorities. What? Andre and Moody exchanged surprised glances, then nodded in understanding. No wonder, they both thought. I didn't expect the Silver Spear to be so audacious. They dared to cause such a big commotion outside after their home base was raided. Do you think they're crazy? Moody pondered, perplexed by the recent bold actions of the Silver Spear. In the past, these individuals had hidden away, making themselves nearly invisible. Andre nodded in agreement. I think this might be a chain reaction from our raid on their breeding park. The Silver Spear is openly operating in Northern Europe, which must be their old business, given the cold season in Northern Europe. It just proves their desperation. Perhaps the Silver Spear's financial resources are starting to dry up. Although Andre wasn't privy to the information about the elixir, he had still managed to deduce a lot from the relevant details. End of this chapter. Chapter 562, A New Action. Then we should strike those silver spears while they're weak. Moody sneered grimly. The weaker they are, the less damage they can cause in the future. Yes, I think so too, Anduin nodded in agreement. He then turned to Moody. How are the two guys in the warehouse stronghold doing now? Have they made up their minds to escape from prison? Humph, I get angry just thinking about those two unworthy idiots. Moody curled his lips in displeasure. They are the most cowardly wizards I have ever seen. They discuss how to avoid the guards and escape from the cage every day, but they never take any action. I'm getting impatient waiting. Moody's displeased expression made the other two look at each other and smile. Andre then tried to calm him. They are just being cautious, which is normal. Can you be patient? Moody's anger flared even more at Andre's rebuttal. I'm not in a hurry for a day or two, but if these two idiots are going to wait a month or two before escaping, do we have to wait that long? Well, what Moody said isn't entirely wrong, Anduin nodded in agreement. After a moment of thought, he said, give them a few more days. If they are still hesitating, then try to scare them into acting quickly. Oh, what do you mean? Moody looked at Anduin curiously. It's simple. Put some pressure on them in the prison. Spread a rumor that they are about to be transferred, or clean up the memory of one or two wizards on the spot and take them away, making it look like they are being brainwashed. Hey, that's a good idea. Some of the club's partners have long displeased me, and they can be used to set an example. Moody grinned sinisterly, looking like an evil villain. Hey, be careful. Don't hurt those civilian wizards. They are innocent, Andre cautioned. He valued civilian wizards who were also Germans and couldn't accept seeking benefits by sacrificing them. Don't worry, I'm also an Auror. I wouldn't do something like murdering civilians, and you haven't become the Minister of Magic yet, so why worry about this in advance? Moody curled his lips angrily, clearly disagreeing with Andre. Seeing the tension rise again, Anduin interrupted. Don't worry, Andre. Moody will be careful. Besides, there's another very important task that needs your cooperation. Oh? Andre raised his eyebrows. What's the matter? Isn't our next step to wait for the launch of Operation Blind Snake? This task may not be as impactful as Operation Blind Snake, but it is still very important and can deal a heavy blow to the club, Anduin said with a cold smile. A heavy blow? Are you referring to what I mentioned before? Andre seemed to realize something and looked at Anduin with wide eyes. That's right. Anduin nodded affirmatively. It's hunting the phoenix. Upon hearing Anduin's words, Moody and Andre's eyes lit up, and they looked at him with burning anticipation. Seeing their expectant expressions, Anduin continued, I have confirmed that she has recently arrived in Germany and pinpointed her location. She will stay there for at least 2 days. If we want to deal with her, we must seize this opportunity. Otherwise, we might miss our chance. Didn't you say that the Schmidt family wanted to eliminate this enemy? Now is the time. For this phoenix, Anduin had never stopped monitoring her. Hogg had been staying in Germany, keeping a close watch. Apart from monitoring every move of the Silver Spear headquarters and Golden Snidget, the most important task is to track down Phoenix. Just yesterday, Anduin received a report from Hogg shortly after she returned to Germany. It seems that after the club's failed attempt to attack the Berlin United Front with the help of the West German Endeavor Association, they are now targeting a non-governmental organization in East Germany. The non-governmental organizations in West Germany had previously aroused public anger and are now being dealt with coldly, making them unsuitable targets for another attack. What are we waiting for? Andre jumped to pee from the sofa upon hearing the news. Let's leave now. I'll call for reinforcements. I've heard of Phoenix before. She's not only a top executive of the club, but may also be one of the founders of the Silver Spear. Capturing her would deal a significant blow to the club. Hold on, I haven't finished talking. Why are you in such a hurry? Anduin, now familiar with Andre's impulsive nature, couldn't help but be exasperated. Phoenix is not easy to deal with. If we rush in without a plan and she escapes, it would only serve as a warning. Andre scratched his head in embarrassment. But you also said that Phoenix doesn't stay in Germany for long. We might not have the luxury of time to plan as meticulously as before. What if she leaves while we're still discussing tactics? Yes, Anduin, Moody chimed in. Dealing with Phoenix is different from raiding the breeding park. We don't have time to waste. I understand your concerns, Anduin replied, not disagreeing with them. Indeed, we can't waste time dealing with Phoenix. But when I say not to rush, I mean we need to make some preparations and gather more information about her. Otherwise, I won't be responsible for any mishaps. Andre realized that Anduin's words made sense. Anduin had always been calm, thoughtful, and methodical. If he suggested targeting Phoenix now, he must have a plan. Andre settled back into his seat. Seeing Andre calm down, Anduin continued, I've learned a lot about Phoenix. Besides being one of the founders of the Silver Spear, she is also one of the 4 strongest members of the club. If we're not careful, we could face significant problems. The Silver Spear is known as a dueling club, and their members' strength should not be underestimated. That's true. I've fought against strong members of the Silver Spear, and their abilities are indeed formidable, Andre acknowledged. Moody, recalling the terrifying Thunderbird, also understood the gravity of the situation. If Phoenix's strength matched Thunderbird's, acting hastily would be reckless. As far as I know, Phoenix is very skilled in black magic. For instance, the corrosion spell often encountered among Silver Spear members is said to be her creation. Additionally, she has the ability to summon ghosts. When we were in England, we seized an alchemy item that could instantly release a large number of corpses to fight. I suspect Phoenix excels in group combat. If too many people are involved, we could easily be overwhelmed. I remember what Anduin said, Moody nodded. I've faced a wizard using the infernal corpse summoning bag. Unlike ordinary summoning, which requires corpses as a medium, this item can summon ghost corpses instantly. If Phoenix possesses similar abilities, we need to be extremely cautious. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. They knew they had to act swiftly, but with careful planning to ensure their success against Phoenix. In a short period of time, it is very difficult to conjure something out of thin air, yet one person managed to stop a dozen or so aurors before us. Is there such an outrageous magic? Then when dealing with the Phoenix, we must use our elite forces. Ordinary wizards will be trapped, and we won't be able to do our best. That's right. To deal with the Phoenix, the number of main combatants should be small but highly skilled, Anduin nodded in agreement. Additionally, the opponent's hiding place is in a Muggle urban area of Berlin. Although it is a relatively remote corner, there are still people around. When the battle starts, it will be easy to hurt the innocent. So, besides facing her wizard directly, we need to deploy people to control the scene. Indeed, in addition to controlling the scene, we also need to maintain confidentiality. Otherwise, it will be troublesome if people from the club come to support her, Andre added, recognizing the key point. Leave that to me. I will arrange enough jammers around the Phoenix's hiding place in advance to ensure that no information can be transmitted from the other party. This will also prevent her from using apparition and portkeys to escape, Anduin assured, having already thought of countermeasures. Seeing that Anduin had thought so thoroughly and collected detailed information about the opponent, Andre knew that Anduin must be fully prepared as usual. He solemnly nodded at him. In that case, you will take command. Just tell us what we need to do. Very good. Anduin appreciated Andre's straightforward character. Next, I need you to contact the Schmidt family immediately. If they want to avenge themselves, they can send people to participate in the operation, but the number should not exceed 2. In addition, apart from the Schmidt family, the main attackers for this operation will be just you, me, and Moody. The others are not allowed to approach the battle site. At the same time, I need 8 to 10 aurors to drive away the muggles on the periphery, control the scene, and be responsible for the restoration afterward. These preparations must be carried out immediately, and we will start tonight. No problem. Moody and Andre immediately agreed. They exchanged a glance, and a tacit understanding passed between them, their eyes burning with a strong fighting spirit. End of this chapter. Chapter 563, The Schmidt Family. That night, in a Muggle rental house on the outskirts of Berlin, Anduin sat leisurely on the couch, occasionally glancing at his pocket watch. Almost time. I wonder if Andre is ready, he muttered to himself, after checking the exquisitely crafted silver pocket watch once more. Suddenly, the space in the room distorted, followed by a series of sounds breaking through the air. Within seconds, a dozen people appeared in the previously empty rental house. Leading the group were Andre and Moody, accompanied by 10 aurors who had participated in Operation Concentric Circles. Additionally, 2 unfamiliar wizards stood beside Andre. They appeared to be in their 50s, and their finely crafted wizard robes indicated their distinguished status. "Sorry, Anduin, we're not late," Andre greeted as soon as he arrived. He then introduced the 2 wizards. "Mr. Schmidt, this is Anduin Wilson, the one I told you about. He will be in charge of tonight's operation." Turning to Anduin, he continued, "These are Edmund and Alan of the Schmidt family. They are brothers, with Edmund being the current patriarch of the Schmidt family and the one affected by the Phoenix." Anduin raised his brows in surprise. He had invited members of the Schmidt family mainly to have them as witnesses and to solidify their alliance with Andre. He hadn't expected much from the personnel they would send. To his astonishment, the patriarch himself had come, taking a significant risk. This was not a mere show. Real danger and potential death were involved. The desire for justice for his murdered son was stronger than Anduin had anticipated. As Anduin observed the 2 brothers, Edmund and Alan scrutinized him in return. They were surprised to see that the conductor Andre had mentioned was a young man, possibly not even 20 years old. However, as members of a long-standing wizard family, they were more reserved and polite than ordinary wizards and refrained from judging by appearances. Edmund, the elder brother and patriarch, took the lead and bowed slightly in a gentlemanly manner. "Hello, Mr. Wilson. We have heard of your name for a long time. It is rumored that you are the representative of the new generation of alchemists. After Dumbledore, you are the British wizard expected to become the next legendary master alchemist. But I didn't expect our first meeting to be on such an occasion. As a distinguished alchemist, is it really appropriate for you to participate in such a dangerous operation?" Though Edmund's words were respectful, Anduin could sense the underlying doubt about his capabilities. "Haha, don't underestimate Anduin," Andre interjected before Anduin could respond. "I also underestimated him at first because of his youth, but I soon realized this kid is exceptional. Not only is Anduin's strength formidable, but he is also proficient in strategy, tactics, and intelligence gathering. He was the first to uncover the club's plan to infiltrate the German Ministry of Magic. It was Anduin who discovered the Silver Spear's plot against your Schmidt family and pinpointed the Phoenix's whereabouts." As Andre spoke, Moody and the surrounding aurors nodded in agreement, clearly indicating that Anduin had earned their respect and trust through his abilities. Seeing the attitudes of those around them, Edmund and Alan's initial doubts began to wane. As the conversation unfolded, it became clear to everyone that the young man standing before them was far more complex than they had initially imagined. They were well acquainted with Andre, the seasoned official from the Ministry of Magic, and anyone who could earn his praise must possess extraordinary abilities. "Since Mr. Wilson has already had the experience of working with Director Andre, my concerns seem unnecessary," Edmund said, smiling apologetically at Anduin. He then continued with a serious tone. "The Silver Spear and Phoenix not only used my child as a pawn, but also deceived our entire family and allies. This is an insult to the Schmidt family. We will stand with Andre." Anduin understood the underlying message in Edmund's words. Essentially, Edmund was saying that while they opposed the Silver Spear, their full support was not guaranteed. The Schmidt family, a long-established wizarding lineage, wielded significant influence in the German magical world, both in business and politics. They were known for their cautious and ambiguous statements, never fully committing to one side. "We are equally outraged by what the Silver Spear did to the Schmidt family," Anduin responded. "Director Andre revealed the club's conspiracy to you because he didn't want your family to continue being deceived, which would harm your reputation. The Silver Spear Club is a cancer in the German wizarding world. If they are not eradicated, Germany will continue to suffer." The choice you make now is crucial for the future tranquility of our country. Director Andre has always upheld this belief and has been at the forefront of this battle. Anduin's message was clear. The Schmidt fam bore some responsibility for allowing the Silver Spear to infiltrate the Ministry of Magic so deeply. By standing up against them now, they could atone for their past mistakes. Furthermore, the club could become a public enemy in Germany, and aligning with Andre, who was leading the charge against them, would bring significant benefits. The conversation between Anduin and Edmund was essentially an investment pitch, hoping to secure the Schmidt family's full support. After listening to Anduin, Edmund glanced at his younger brother Alan and nodded subtly. The young man before them was indeed shrewd, having maneuvered them with just a few words. However, as the head of the family, Edmund had to be cautious. They had been deceived by Pete before, and now he couldn't fully trust Andre and Anduin. But with the evidence Andre provided, Edmund was convinced that the Silver Spear was responsible for his son's death, forming the basis of their cooperation. "I understand your point," Edmund said, nodding noncommittally. He then added, "Alan and I will follow your lead for this operation. After the Phoenix avenges my beloved son, the Schmidt family will never forget the kindness of you and Director Andre." Anduin couldn't help but feel a bit exasperated. It was clear that Edmund needed to see their methods firsthand before fully committing. He found dealing with such cautious individuals tiresome compared to the straightforwardness of people like Moody, Hagrid, and Andre. Andre, who had been oblivious to the subtle exchange between Anduin and Edmund, urged, "Anduin, you see Edmund and the others are reasonable. It's almost time now. Shouldn't we get started?" "All right, everyone gather around. I will briefly explain the details of the operation," Anduin announced without hesitation. He moved to the dining table in the rental house and pulled out a special tactical map from his belongings. Everyone fell silent and gathered around the table, ready to listen. At this moment, Anduin took out his wand and tapped it on the tactical map. A 3D projection of a house materialized before them. Edmund and Alan, having never seen such advanced magical gadgets before, were taken aback by the stereoscopic image. However, they noticed that the expressions of the surrounding aurors remained calm and unsurprised. Anduin, without paying much attention to the two newcomers, pointed to the three-dimensional image and began to explain. "This townhouse is Phoenix's hideout in Germany. It is located just over 100 meters from where we are now." He continued, "It's important to note that these townhouses are connected with only a single wall separating Phoenix's hideout from other Muggle homes. I've investigated this row of houses beforehand, and each one is occupied. This means that during our operation, the residents will be in significant danger." After briefly introducing the external environment, Anduin pointed at the three-dimensional image again. The surface of the house was cut open, revealing its internal layout. "I conducted a detailed survey of Phoenix's hideout. It has 3 floors plus a basement. There is a master bedroom and 4 guest rooms. Each floor has a fireplace connected to the flue network," Anduin explained. "From my observations, Phoenix's usual range of activities is mainly in the reception room on the 2nd floor and the master bedroom on the 3rd floor. Therefore, she will most likely be resting in the bedroom on the 3rd floor later." Anduin meticulously described each room's layout, location, and orientation, especially for the 4 individuals who would be leading the main assault. "In terms of tactical arrangements, we need to divide into 2 groups. One group will consist of peripheral personnel, further split into 2 teams. One team will guard the streets in front of and behind the houses. Your responsibility will be to cast spells to repel Muggles from the streets and prevent stray bullets or flying debris generated during the battle from causing secondary damage to the outside world." At this point, Anduin gave a special look at the aurors, ensuring they understood the gravity of their roles. End of this chapter. Chapter 564. Onward. Seeking monthly ticket and recommendation ticket. "Don't worry, you've seen their skills before. The task of defense is definitely not a problem," Andre assured Anduin, patting his chest confidently. "Well, this is a secret operation, and we must not expose ourselves. If we attract a large number of silver spears, it will be dangerous," Anduin warned again. He continued, As for the other Auror team, you need to enter the houses on both sides of the target's hideout immediately after our frontal forces launch an attack. Evacuate the Muggles living there. If necessary, use coercive means. This process must be fast. Just controlling the 2 adjacent houses is not enough insurance. It's best to control the entire row of houses. Remember to clean up their memories afterward, Anduin instructed. And to avoid alerting the Phoenix, we can't evacuate them in advance. Your actions must be synchronized with ours. Understand? Don't worry, it's just another door-breaking operation. The targets are Muggles. We promise to complete the evacuation within 1 minute, an Auror said confidently. 1 minute? Edmund and Alan exchanged glances, surprised by the Auror's confidence. They were also curious about the door-breaking operation the Aurors mentioned. Andre hadn't disclosed much about the club to the Schmidt family, leaving them confused and slightly uneasy about the Aurors' past actions. After explaining the tasks to the Aurors, Anduin turned solemnly to the 4 people in charge of the main battle. Our frontal combat team will break through from the front of the 3rd floor for this raid, he said, pointing to the location of the master bedroom. Phoenix's bedroom faces the street. We can fly up, destroy the wall on the 3rd floor, and catch Phoenix by surprise. Our first attack is crucial because she is likely to be unconscious. When attacking her, do not hold back. It's best to severely injure her at once, Anduin emphasized. However, if Phoenix is awake and can counterattack, we will implement the second plan. Everyone must disperse immediately to avoid her powerful group attack magic. I will engage Phoenix directly, and the rest of you will cover each other from the 4 corners, using crossfire to launch a saturated attack. We need to take her down quickly to prevent the battle from spreading, Anduin said decisively, his eyes firm. Andre and Moody nodded immediately, but Edmund hesitated. Are you sure? Our spellcasting strength is different from that of ordinary wizards. Accidental injuries are no joke. Anduin smiled calmly. Don't worry, I have my own measures. In addition, if Phoenix uses magic or props to summon a large number of corpses, use flame magic to clean them up. I've prepared constant temperature amulets for everyone to isolate the heat from the flames and avoid accidental injuries, Anduin explained. He then distributed a large amount of equipment, including various tactical talismans, jammers, tracking glasses, communication headsets, and tactical vests. The constant temperature amulet was a new creation Anduin had thought of after his trip to Northern Europe. He believed that a prop capable of stabilizing body temperature would be very popular if sold. In places with harsh weather like the extreme north, the initial design of these amulets considered cold protection. However, they also have a certain effect in preventing high temperatures. I took out a few trial samples and shared them with everyone. The wizards around didn't hesitate when they saw this. It wasn't the first time they used these props, even when they started to change their costumes. Last time, Anduin took them back after they were used up, as the cost of making these props is not low. Anduin couldn't afford to send out a new batch after each use. Only Edmund and Alan looked confused. They couldn't understand what these things were, but seeing everyone's proficiency, they could only learn how to assemble them. After a while, everyone was ready. Anduin took out Destroyan, de-inserted the wand into the tail. After combining it with dark drawing, the long sword in his hand immediately sparked with electricity, as if eager to be used. Additionally, Anduin took out 3 Lincoln spheres and lightly lifted them into the air. The 3 silver spheres slowly circled around Anduin like obedient elves, finally dispersing in the shape of an equilateral triangle behind his head. Edmund was startled by Anduin's posture. Using a long sword as a weapon was unique enough, but the power emanating from it seemed too fancy. As Edmund curiously muttered about Anduin's wide variety of equipment, Anduin, who was ready, waved his hand. The action starts now. Everyone quickly enter battle positions. Yes! All the Aurors, including Andre and Moody, shouted, activated apparition, and disappeared from the room in an instant. Only Edmund and Alan, who reacted a little slower, were left behind. Brother, everyone seems to have set off, Alan said, feeling like a random soldier. Then what are you waiting for? Follow up. Edmund, feeling out of place, snorted angrily and pulled his brother to launch apparition. When they flashed to the prearranged meeting place, only Anduin, Andre, and Moody were left guarding at the bottom of the wall. The rest of the Aurors had already dispersed and lurked around the target house. So this is what professional looks like? I questioned Anduin's level before, but now it's clear we were the ones who were lacking. Just don't hold back later. Edmund looked at the state of the others and felt bitter, but he quickly pulled Alan to stand against the wall and hid in the shadow. Anduin saw that the Schmidt brothers were in place, so he took out his pocket watch and glanced carefully. Then he looked at the target location across the street. His calm voice appeared simultaneously through the communication earphone in everyone's ears. Everyone, check your watches. It is now 11:57. In 2.5 minutes, the security team will deploy the jammer. 3 minutes from now, all staff will start to act on time. Received, came a series of low-pitched replies in the earphones, even from Andre and Moody. The Schmidt brothers, though confused, also answered accordingly, feeling their confused appearance looked very stupid. After Anduin finished broadcasting the order, he turned to look at the other 4 people leaning against the wall. You guys should also prepare a little bit. I will rush ahead in a while, and the work of breaking the wall will be mine. Make sure to find a good position and don't cluster together. Don't worry, it's just killing someone. We dispatched so many people, it's enough, one of them replied confidently. To give Phoenix face, the biggest challenge this time is maintaining secrecy. As long as we don't cast any large-scale spells that spread too far, watch me take her down directly with Avada Kedavra, Moody said, licking his lips and sneering eagerly. Edmund, standing nearby, decided to distance himself from Moody, feeling that something was off about him. Don't be foolish. The consequences of this operation can be significant. Don't make a scene. It will be hard to clean up. Andre warned, giving Moody a stern look. He then took out his broomstick and prepared to take his position. Seeing this, the other 3 stopped their banter and also took out their broomsticks, readying themselves for takeoff. Only Anduin kept his eyes fixed on the pocket watch in his hand. When the action time was half a minute away, the scattered Aurors carefully took out the jammers that Anduin had given them and deployed them one by one. As the countdown reached the last 10 seconds, Anduin's voice rang in everyone's ears. Everyone in position. Now start the countdown. 10, 9, 3, 2, 1, go. With a soft shout, Anduin immediately activated the flying cloak on his body and shot forward like an arrow released from a bow. The 4 behind him were not far behind, following closely on their broomsticks. Additionally, the Aurors waiting outside the houses on both sides quickly activated the Amulet of Silence and broke in, aiming to evacuate the Muggles as swiftly as possible. In just 2 seconds, Anduin reached the opposite side of the street. He raised the long sword in his hand and aimed at the target position, thrusting it fiercely. An enhanced version of the background curse blasted from the tip of the sword, striking the wall directly. Boom! With a loud noise, the previously intact stone wall was blown apart, creating a hole more than 2 meters in diameter. Stone fragments and smoke filled the air. Anduin, showing no intention of slowing down, plunged into the hole, aiming for the bed. In the room, a beautiful girl about 20 years old lay on the bed in a loose nightgown. She was awakened by the commotion, her eyes wide with horror as she looked at the approaching Anduin. Anduin didn't hesitate. He knew from many days of surveillance that this innocent-looking girl was the spear Phoenix in the club. Without a second thought, he swung the long sword, crackling with lightning, and slashed at her fiercely. End of this chapter. Chapter 565, Elegy of the Soul. Andre and the others, who had followed closely behind, rushed into the bedroom. They were momentarily stunned upon seeing the true face of Phoenix. This young woman, who appeared to be around 20 years old, was the legendary Phoenix? The local German wizards, Andre, Edmund, and Alan, were all filled with doubt. As local wizards, they had a certain understanding of the Silver Spear, and they knew the name Phoenix from 10 years ago. Logically, it was impossible for her to be so young. Seeing the appearance of the woman before them, they couldn't help but question if they had recognized the wrong person. Could there have been a mistake in Anduin's information? Even Edmund wanted to stop Anduin, but Anduin, who had already rushed forward, didn't waste any time. He drew his sword and slashed. With blue and silver electric light attached, Anduin's sword struck firmly on the wooden bed. At the moment of the slash, the wild thunder on the sword formed a lightning bolt from top to bottom, generating a secondary damage. Boom! The two-stage attack of the sword slash and lightning directly smashed the luxurious bed under Phoenix into pieces. The huge impact force threw the fragments of the wooden bed far away, filling the room with smoke and dust. However, Anduin did not show any joy of success. His face was gloomy. His attack had failed. Despite his extreme speed, he was still a step too slow and failed to make a decisive strike. When Anduin blasted in, Phoenix, who had just woken up, was momentarily stunned. But as Anduin slashed with his sword, Phoenix, lying on the bed, snapped out of her initial shock. A black gemstone necklace on her chest suddenly flashed with a dazzling magical aura just as the attack was about to hit, and then it exploded instantly. Her body transformed into wisps of black smoke, dispersing into countless parts and flowing aside, leaving Anduin's murderous attack in the air. The life-saving prop used by Phoenix at the critical moment did not last long. The plume of black smoke surged again after only a few meters, and Phoenix rolled and crawled out of it. She was wearing a black silk hollowed-out nightgown, her exquisite and translucent body barely concealed. Her bare feet and legs were visible, but at this moment, Phoenix looked very embarrassed. Her scattered black hair and dirt clung to her white skin, making her appear more like an innocent girl being bullied than the leader of a criminal organization. Phoenix looked at the intruders with an ugly expression. After a quick glance, she recognized Andre, the director of the Department of Legal Enforcement, and Edmund, the patriarch of the Schmidt family. Although she didn't know the young man who had attacked her, she could tell from the thick magic power surging around him that he was also a formidable character. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Phoenix's heart skipped a beat. Could these people be the main culprits against the club during this period? Their sudden appearance to kill her suggested they had come specifically for her. Knowing the situation was dire, Phoenix wanted to apparate away immediately. If she was truly under siege, escaping would be difficult. However, after trying, she found she couldn't teleport at all. Her face turned extremely ugly. These guys had indeed come prepared. Phoenix quickly calculated her options in her mind, but her expression remained grim. The girl continued to feign innocence and terror. "Who are you all, and why did you suddenly break into my house?" Edmund, standing next to her, looked at the extremely delicate girl, his face suddenly conflicted. He was still unsure if this was the target wizard Phoenix of the club. If she was completely innocent, she had narrowly escaped Anduin's killing blow just now. Such strength was uncommon among ordinary wizards. Unlike Edmund's hesitation, Anduin sneered. He raised his sword and was about to charge forward, jokingly saying, "Phoenix, your time has come. You can either surrender today or confess everything here." "Why are you wasting time talking to her? Take her down first. Avada Kedavra!" Moody, standing to the side, moved even more quickly and ruthlessly. He trusted Anduin's judgment implicitly. If Anduin said she was Phoenix, then she must be. Bunch of lunatics. Phoenix couldn't help cursing in her heart. How could these guys be so sure of her identity? Judging by her current appearance, she looked like a woman from a respectable family. But Anduin had already rushed towards her, and the ugly wizard next to him had even gone crazy, casting a killing curse on her. Reasoning with these guys was impossible. Realizing the situation, Phoenix's heart hardened. Her expression changed from innocent and terrified to extremely ferocious. "If that's the case, then you all will die here," she screamed. "Elegy of the soul! Ha!" Phoenix, her face transformed in an instant, waved her hand and pulled a wooden cabinet from the side to block Moody's killing curse. She then opened her mouth and let out a loud shout, followed by a shrill and abnormal scream. The ear-piercing sound waves erupted instantly like a sonic bomb, shattering all the glass and ceramic products in the room. The sharp sound waves left everyone around her dizzy. Even Anduin, who activated the silent amulet in time, was slowed down. Although he was not affected by the sonic boom, the magic Phoenix cast was not just a high-decibel sound. It was also accompanied by a massive outward thrust. But Phoenix's Elegy of the Soul magic was far from over. a burst of amazing magic power suddenly erupted from her body. Red and black magic lines appeared on her skin, glittering like tattoos. After these lines flickered for a second or so, Phoenix seemed to have accumulated all her strength. She spread her hands outward, and the red and black magic lines on her body glowed brightly. Immediately, several magic groups, wrapped in thick black smoke, centered on Phoenix, scattered to the surroundings. From above, it looked like a black firework had exploded, with Phoenix at the center. These wash-basin-sized magic groups swirled and rushed towards the besiegers as if they were conscious, accompanied by the wailing of evil ghosts. If one looked closely, they could see hideous human faces surging in the black smoke of each magic group. After casting this large-scale magic, Phoenix seemed to be a bit out of strength, but she still supported herself and stomped fiercely on the ground. The floor seemed to be corroded by strong acid, instantly melting into a big hole. Phoenix fell through to the second floor. The sudden outburst of Phoenix was complex to describe, but in reality, the whole operation took place in an instant. To Anduin and the others, it seemed like she just yelled and kicked. As a result, Phoenix disappeared from their sight. No, hurry up and don't let her escape. Although Andre was caught off guard, his strength was indeed formidable. He recovered in an instant and yelled at everyone to hurry. But the magic groups released by Phoenix. At the last moment, the Phoenix transformed into hideous and terrifying black ghosts, rushing towards the crowd. Burning flames! Following Anduin's instructions from before the battle, they quickly chose the fire curse to combat the necromantic black magic. The flame curse proved effective against the ghosts, causing them to wail in agony as they burned. However, these ghosts were not easily vanquished. After being struck by the flame curse, they exploded in a painful surge. Instead of disappearing, they split into several smaller ghostly images that continued to harass the crowd. "This is too slow," Anduin observed, after a brief glance. He noted that, apart from their corrosive nature, these ghosts were not particularly lethal, at least not to elite wizards like them. Despite their lack of strength, the ghosts were incredibly difficult to destroy. When hit by a powerful spell, they would split into smaller ghosts and persist in their attacks. Although their power diminished, they wasted valuable time by continuously entangling with wizards. Realizing the urgency, Anduin knew he couldn't wait any longer. If Phoenix managed to escape the house, the wizards outside wouldn't be able to hold her off for long. He lifted his right leg high, and a surge of desolate thunder gathered around it, wrapping his leg from sole to knee as if he were wearing blue and silver boots. "Thunder trample!" Anduin shouted, stomping hard on the ground. A halo of lightning formed at his feet, rapidly spreading outward. The electric halo not only covered the ground, but also raised an electric wall up to the ceiling. This ring-shaped electric wall swept outward with domineering force. The difficult ghosts, upon hitting the electric wall, disintegrated into fly ash, losing their ability to split. The powerful stomp not only freed the surrounding people from the siege, but also created a large hole in the floor. Anduin took advantage of this and descended to the lower floor, shouting upwards, "Moody, guard the main entrance. Everyone else, follow quickly." After landing safely, Anduin noticed a corroded hole in the ground nearby. It was clear that Phoenix had not stayed on the second floor, but had descended further. End of this chapter. Chapter 566. Thunderous Piercing. Seeing the scene in front of him, Anduin didn't delay. They had already wasted nearly 10 seconds on the upper floor. If they gave Phoenix any more time, she might actually escape. Determined, Anduin immediately lifted his long sword and stabbed it into the ground. With a bang, the floor shattered, creating a large hole, and he fell through to the first floor. Upon reaching the first floor, Anduin noticed something was amiss. There was a big hole in the ground, and Phoenix had gone straight into the basement. This puzzled Anduin, because when Phoenix returned to France, he had secretly inspected the entire building, including the basement. There was no passage leading outside from below. Why would Phoenix go into the basement? But there was no time to ponder. Time was of the essence. Anduin used his long sword to break through the ground again, continuing his descent through the broken hole. Destroy the shadow. As Anduin fell from the ceiling into the air, he suddenly heard a curse being chanted from the basement below. Several shadow-like black magic bullets shot towards him. Seeing this, Anduin was not nervous but rather relieved. Since Phoenix chose to ambush him here, it meant she had no means of escaping. He had successfully cornered her. Anduin didn't dodge the incoming spells. Instead, he steadied himself in the air, supported by his flying cloak. He swung his long sword, which was infused with wild thunder, and slashed at the incoming magic bullets. Bang, bang, bang. The spells, named Shadow of Destruction, were Phoenix's unique skills. However, they were ineffective against Anduin's sword, empowered by wild thunder. The spells either dissipated upon contact or missed their target, hitting the walls or floor with a strong corrosive effect and a piercing zilla sound, indicating their power. After deflecting Phoenix's ambush, Anduin finally had the opportunity to assess her state. Phoenix stood awkwardly by the fireplace in the basement, about 10 meters away. She was still in her sparse lace nightgown, but now held a magic wand in one hand and flue powder in the other. It seemed she had tried to use the flue network to escape, but her attempt had failed. Anduin had already cut off the flue network in the area before entering. In addition to the flue network, Anduin had also tampered with the ground below. He knew the club included a shuttle curse that could penetrate walls and the ground. The jammer he used also blocked the spell. Phoenix hadn't expected Anduin to arrive so quickly. In theory, her Dirge of the Soul should have delayed him for at least a few minutes, giving her time to escape. But the enemy had caught up in just 10 seconds. She hadn't tried to escape through the main entrance because she sensed other people ambushing outside. Without knowing the opponent's configuration and unable to use apparition, running to an open place would make her an easy target. So she considered escaping through the flue network, but the enemies had ruthlessly cut off that route as well. Trapped in the basement, Feng Huang's eyes filled with determination. She knew that if she didn't act decisively today, she wouldn't survive. Yet, she still looked at Anduin with some reluctance. "I've never met you before. Why would you come after me if we have no grievances?" Thunder piercing. Before Feng Huang could attempt to communicate, Anduin had already positioned Destroyer under his ribs, ready to strike. He channeled wild thunder magic into the long sword, creating a fierce and destructive blue-silver blade that extended from the sword's tip and lunged towards Feng Huang with terrifying speed. In that instant, Feng Huang felt like a cornered animal. The young, handsome wizard in front of her seemed kind, but his actions were violently aggressive. Why wouldn't he even let her speak? Why attack so decisively, especially when she was a delicate girl without any clothes on? Despite her internal complaints, Feng Huang reacted swiftly to the menacing attack. She knew she couldn't withstand the spell. The destructive aura made her skin tingle painfully, even from a distance of more than 10 meters. Without hesitation, Feng Huang dodged to the side, rolling and crawling to avoid the attack. The piercing sword aura was too fast. She felt that even a 0.1-second delay would have resulted in her being hit by the terrifying magic sword. If she were even grazed by it, she might be completely annihilated. Anduin's blow was indeed powerful. The blue-silver sword chi pierced through the air like a flashlight beam, striking the fireplace where Feng Huang had been standing. The impact was silent but deadly, leaving a fist-sized, smooth hole in the fireplace. "Damn!" Anduin muttered in dissatisfaction, regretting that he hadn't killed Feng Huang with one blow. He had developed the thunder-piercing move some time ago, and its first failure in actual combat left him unhappy. Seeing Anduin's regretful expression, Feng Huang, who had narrowly escaped, felt a surge of anger. Her hasty response had left her in a more embarrassing state than before. Her arms and legs were scratched, and her nightdress was torn in several places, leaving her almost naked. But she had no time to worry about her appearance. Anduin's relentless attitude and his focus on killing her brought immense pressure. The strength and lethality he displayed were astonishing, and she hadn't forgotten that he had several companions. If they joined forces, her chances of survival would be slim. The chances of her escape were becoming increasingly slim. It was a pity that most of her equipment and props were not with her. If only she had carried her space props with her when she slept. The habit of sleeping naked was proving to be a real disadvantage. After cursing inwardly, Feng Huang's eyes hardened with resolve. She knew that if she didn't take drastic action today, she might be in serious danger. Destroy the shadow! Tremor the fear. Phoenix quickly got up and swung her wand, casting more than a dozen of her signature black magic spells in an instant. She also used the Earth-Sticking Curse and Hidden Curse, hoping to catch Anduin off guard. However, for Anduin, who was equally skilled in duels, these tricks could only serve as minor delays. The spells couldn't even get close to him, as they were swiftly cut down by the sword energy of Anduin's Shenfeng Wuying. But Phoenix wasn't trying to defeat Anduin with these spells. She needed just a few seconds of delay. Suddenly, she flipped her wand upside down and stabbed it fiercely into her palm. Despite the wand not being particularly sharp, her relentless force drove it through her hand, causing blood to gush out and flow down her fingertips. Phoenix showed no hesitation or pain as she pulled the wand out of her palm. As she did, a long strip of blood followed, like drawing syrup, forming a whip made entirely of blood. She lowered the blood whip to the ground, allowing the blood to stain the floor completely. Then she began to spin rapidly, using the blood whip as a pen to draw a circular pattern on the ground, resembling the spiral pattern on a snail shell. After quickly completing the pattern, Phoenix squatted down fiercely and thrust the blood-stained wand into the center of the spiral. "Guardian of the Netherworld," she shouted, her face pale from blood loss. An astonishing wave of magic power erupted from her and the lines on the ground simultaneously. The spiral pattern drawn in blood quickly changed from red to black, and a ring of dirty red and black smoke spewed out from the edge of the pattern. As the smoke gradually dissipated, the spiral pattern on the ground had transformed into a red-black circular pothole with a bubbling viscous liquid still clinging to its surface. End of this chapter. Chapter 567, Nether Guardians. At this moment, the pool of liquid beneath Phoenix's feet glowed a sinister red, resembling a pool of molten oil. It exuded an extremely filthy aura, yet Phoenix's snow-white jade feet stepped directly into it without being tainted, as if the slime possessed a life of its own. Anduin, standing opposite, was frantically trying to dispel the spell Phoenix had cast, but he couldn't prevent her from completing it. His senses told him that the magic she was using was extremely dangerous. He could detect elements of space, darkness, and death emanating from the pool of liquid. This kind of ritual, which required sacrificing one's own blood, was often associated with extremely evil black magic. If Phoenix were allowed to complete it, the threat would become even greater. Without hesitation, Anduin launched several invisible sword strikes at Phoenix, then lunged forward, attempting to close the distance and attack. Just as the invisible sword chi was about to hit Phoenix, her ritual magic reached its initial completion. The muddy liquid beneath Phoenix's feet exploded with a loud bang, like oil suddenly igniting. As the mud erupted, ghostly howls filled the air. Skinny hands began to protrude from the pool of mucus, followed by arms, shoulders, torsos, and heads. The creatures summoned by Phoenix's magic, referred to as Nether Guardians, in her spell, emerged before Anduin. These new humanoid monsters were different from the yin corpses he had encountered before. While yin corpses resembled zombies, slow and not particularly lethal unless in large numbers, the monsters before him were clearly elite. They wore close-fitting armor and wielded short-handled or long-handled weapons. Their faces were dry and grotesque, with eyes glowing red. Disgusting slime clung to their skin and armor, making them look like a group of wet, armored skeleton soldiers. However, they were not skeletons. They were merely skin and bones. The number of Nether Guardians emerging from the mud fountain was substantial, and their movement speed was significantly faster than that of the yin corpses. Several of them rushed out instantly, brandishing their weapons and charging at Anduin. Anduin's Shenfeng shadowless sword chi was not to be underestimated. It sliced the leading Nether Guardians in half on the spot. However, the physical resilience of these ghosts was extraordinary. After Anduin's sword chi cut down one guardian, it was immediately blocked by the ones behind. More and more Nether Guardians continued to pour out of the sludge fountain, quickly filling half of the basement. Despite the overwhelming numbers, Anduin remained composed, thinking quickly. It seems my earlier guess was correct. The magic Phoenix is using is indeed a summoning ritual, and the quagmire beneath her feet functions as a one-way portal. To maintain this portal, Phoenix not only sacrifices her own blood, but also continuously channels magic into the ritual circle. I don't know where the other end of the portal leads, or if there's an upper limit to the number of these summoned ghosts. If there's no upper limit, or if it's very high, this could become a serious problem. As Anduin pondered the situation, he prepared himself for the continuous onslaught of Nether Guardians, knowing that he had to find a way to disrupt the ritual and close the portal before it was too late. Summoning relies on the reserve of magical power, and for an ancient witch like Phoenix, who has lived for hundreds of years, magic is paramount. We must act quickly to stop this summoning ceremony. If we delay, the number of summoned creatures will become endless, creating a significant problem. A Resident Evil scenario in the city center would have disastrous effects, and Phoenix would undoubtedly use the chaos to escape. Having made up his mind, Anduin quickly considered how to close the summoning portal. Directly attacking the portal was an option, but the consequences of magical disruption could be unpredictable. It might destabilize the summoning ceremony and close the portal, or it could make the space more unstable, expanding the portal and causing a counter-effect. To safely close this kind of portal, one could either target the wizard maintaining it, waiting for her mana to deplete, or kill her directly. However, the portal summoning the Nether Guardians was unique. It was a sludge fountain, and these monsters emerged from it. Phoenix was now completely submerged in the fountain, and Anduin was unsure if attacking her directly would affect the portal's stability. Besides attacking the caster, the only other way to close the portal stably was to sever the space channel of the portal. This method was highly complex, as space-time magic is intricate, and few spells can directly affect space. Most are used for teleportation rather than preventing it. However, Anduin had a solution. When he rescued Phoenix from the club's Nordic transport team, he learned a special rune that could isolate space from the cage used to imprison her. He also had a talisman made with this rune for research purposes. Originally, Anduin intended to use the rune to upgrade his jammer. The structure was complex, and the energy consumption was enormous, so he had only prepared one sample for testing. It seemed that to close this portal, he would have to use the talisman that could block space. However, since it was a trial work, its range of influence was limited. To affect the portal, he would need to throw it directly into the fountain. Does that mean I have to get up close? Anduin thought, seeing the layers of Nether Guardians blocking his path. He nodded firmly. Then let me test the strength of these guards first and then strategize. In less than a second, Anduin calmly completed a series of thoughts. By this time, the roaring Nether Guardians had already charged at him, brandishing their weapons to attack. End of this chapter. Chapter 568, Overload. Facing the menacing undead army, Anduin didn't panic at all. His body was brimming with magical power, and silver electric lights enveloped him. He looked like the god of thunder incarnate. Anduin was exerting his full strength, pouring wild thunder into his body to reach a state similar to when he was tempered by thunderstorms. In this state, all his body functions were enhanced. First, his physique was activated by desolate thunder, greatly improving his dexterity and movement speed. His strength was also significantly increased. He could now easily outrun a world champion and had the strength comparable to a giant bear. Additionally, his mental power and perception received substantial bonuses. His control over wild minds and magic power was significantly strengthened, and his spellcasting loss was reduced by about 20%. The power of his spells increased by 10%, 20%, and if he used Desolate Thunder, it could reach a 30% increase. However, he couldn't maintain this state for long. Although the wild thunder infusion wouldn't harm him due to his previous baptism of thunder and lightning when forging the destroyer, entering this berserk-like state consumed a massive amount of magic power. With his current mana value of less than 1,000 ticks, he estimated he could only last for 5 minutes. Therefore, Anduin rarely used this ability unless absolutely necessary. Due to the obvious positive effects and side effects, Anduin called this move Overload. After entering the Overload state, Anduin raised his sword and pointed it above his head. A group of continuously shrinking and rotating thunderclouds quickly condensed above him, forming his famous stunt, Eye of the Storm. The Eye of the Storm, now blessed by overload, had thunderclouds of unprecedented size and lightning strikes of unmatched frequency and intensity. As soon as the ghost guards holding weapons and claws rushed at Anduin, they were blown away by the lightning from the Eye of the Storm, preventing the armored skeletons from getting close. But self-protection alone wasn't enough. Dozens of undead troops summoned from the sludge fountain were in front of him, each with considerable strength. It was impossible to approach or attack through them. If he was held back by these undead, Anduin would eventually retreat due to exhaustion of magic power, and these undead would endanger the surrounding Muggle community. More troubling was the possibility of Phoenix escaping in the chaos, which would expose their targeting of the Silver Spear and disrupt their follow-up plans. Therefore, Anduin needed to deal with Phoenix directly and quickly pass through the undead army. Overload. Swift sword. Anduin, now looking like a ghostly god, held his sword with both hands. Plasma, like mercury, flowed on the surface of the sword, making it appear as if it had been painted with a layer of blue and silver varnish. He quickly swung the thunder sword, his hands moving in a blur, creating a ring of swords around his body. Without hesitation, he rushed towards the sludge fountain. The Guardians of the Nether blocking his path were swiftly cut down by Anduin's overload swift sword, their bodies split into pieces. Even though the undead army was formidable, Anduin's enhanced state and swift movements allowed him to cut through them like a hot knife through butter. Wearing armor and holding weapons, the Guardians of the Netherworld were no match for Anduin's swift sword, enchanted with highly active wild thunder. They fell like butter cut by a hot knife, fragile and vulnerable to a single blow. As they roared and pounced on Anduin, they were swiftly reduced to piles of dismembered limbs, scattered around. The Eye of the Storm, above Anduin's head, also cast continuous lightning, bombarding the enemy. Under this dual assault, Anduin advanced several meters in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the Phoenix in the sludge seemed to sense Anduin's actions, surprised by his ferocity and efficiency. The portal formed by the sludge fountain suddenly intensified. The turbulent sludge accelerated, and where only a few ghost guards had emerged per second, now a dozen undead sprang out in an instant. These Nether Guardians, who had previously seemed to jump out of the portal actively, were now being thrown out passively. Many of them did not even land on their feet, flying out sideways like a high-pressure water gun spraying undead directly outward. The target of this high-pressure water gun was Anduin, who continued to approach the Phoenix. The sudden increase in the number of undead indeed put significant pressure on him. Although Anduin had been only a few meters away from his target, the sheer number of Nether Guards formed an impenetrable human wall, pushing him back. Despite his rapid killing pace, he couldn't keep up with the undead's appearance rate, causing him to be pushed back a few meters. It seems the Phoenix is desperate. Attacking this density of undead is like cutting down a wall that repairs itself. It's a waste of time to continue like this. Should I use Fierce Fire? Anduin pondered silently. No, Fierce Fire is hard to control, especially in an urban area. If it spreads, the casualties would be significant. Moreover, these Nether Guards seem to have high resistance to flames and high temperatures. Even wild thunder struggles to burn them, mostly tearing and annihilating instead. Have they been specifically protected against fire? This is very possible. Anduin nodded to himself. Phoenix must have anticipated other attacks. Thunderbird is best at fiendfire, which restrains her manipulation of undead corpses. I don't believe Phoenix hasn't prepared countermeasures. These Nether Guardians might withstand fiendfire for a while. As Anduin contemplated his next move, he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. Soon, the Edmund brothers arrived to support him. Although Anduin and Phoenix had exchanged several rounds, their actions were swift and decisive, consuming only about a minute. The arrival of Anduin's allies was timely. The three newcomers were taken aback by the sight of the basement. It was like a purgatory on Earth, filled with countless undead in a confined space. The person covered in electric discharge, could it be Anduin? How had he transformed into a Super Saiyan in just 1 minute? Among the three, the Schmidt brothers were the most surprised. They had never experienced such a tragic battle scene. The sight of the corpses and the intense combat left them in shock. The ground was littered with the remains of dead spirits, and the surrounding area was filled with the stench of rotting corpses. Anduin, wielding his long sword with swift precision, frequently splashed the remains of the undead spirits, leaving almost no place to stand. The gruesome scene made the Schmidt brothers shudder with revulsion. In contrast, Andrexia remained calm. Having worked as an auror in the wizarding world for decades, he had seen it all. A bunch of undead was nothing new to him. As soon as Andrexia landed, he assessed the situation and quickly cast several blazing flame spells, attempting to assist Anduin in breaking the siege. However, Anduin's earlier suspicion proved correct. The powerful flame curse was ineffective against these ghost guards, who were supposed to be vulnerable to fire. The flames only produced a sizzling sound without igniting them. These undead are special living corpses summoned by the Phoenix. They are extremely resistant to flames and high temperatures. We need to find another way to get rid of them. The Phoenix's body is blocked by these undead. I have a way to close the portal, but you have to get close to her. Anduin, still fiercely battling the undead with his swordsmanship and lightning magic, quickly informed Andrexia. Observing Anduin's relentless efforts to break through the wall of the dead, Andrexia nodded thoughtfully. If they're not afraid of flames, I wonder how resistant they are to cutting attacks. He raised his hand and shot out 2 wind blades, one large and one small, shaped by compressed air. Although the ghost guards were focused on Anduin, they instinctively defended against the incoming attack with their weapons. The smaller wind blade cut through the weapon in the hands of an undead, but lacked the power to harm it further. The larger wind blade, however, penetrated the bodies of the undead, nearly cutting one in half. So, this is their level of defense. I understand. Andrexia nodded solemnly and shouted to Anduin, "Give me 10 seconds, and I'll create a passage for you." "No problem," Anduin responded confidently. He trusted his teammates' abilities. If Andrexia said he could open a way, it meant he truly had a plan. Without wasting any time, Andrexia reached into his spatial bag and pulled out a set of blades. Each blade was nearly a meter long and had a slender S shape, resembling the combined blades of 2 curved knives. End of this chapter. Chapter 569, Blade Storm. After taking out the blades, Andre raised his wand and waved it lightly. The blades lifted into the air like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. They lined up in a row, circled around Andre for a moment, and then floated half a meter in front of him, spinning clockwise continuously, as if they were in a front-loading washing machine. The sound of clashing metal filled the air. Soon, the blades in front of Andre began spinning faster and faster until they formed a whirlpool of sharp edges. Within seconds, the blades had transformed into a blade storm, where only afterimages could be seen. The air currents generated by the storm made Andre's clothes flutter wildly. At this moment, Andre shouted to Anduin, "Get out of the way!" Anduin, who had been using his swift sword to fend off the undead in front, had been keeping an eye on the situation behind him. Upon hearing Andre's warning, he immediately dodged to the side without hesitation, clearing the space in front of him. "Call up the storm. Draw the blade," Andre commanded confidently. He pushed the sharp blade storm forward, and the whirlwind of countless blades surged ahead like a horizontal tornado. With Anduin out of the way, the Nether Guardians rushed forward frantically, only to plunge straight into the terrifying storm. The heavily armed Nether Guards were caught in the deadly vortex, unable to maintain their footing. The sharp blades dealt fatal blows, turning into small propellers with razor-sharp edges under Andre's control. The storm was so powerful that the undead were shredded into pieces, almost like being thrown into a juicer. The remains of the undead were not just fragments, they were reduced to a pulp. The walls, ceiling, and floor of the basement were splattered with the minced flesh of the dead. In the confined space, the Nether Guards had no room to dodge or escape. Their only fate was to be twisted into mud and splashed everywhere, covering the area with a thick layer of black mucus, making it feel like a swamp. Edmund and Alan, who were next to Andre, turned pale at the sight of the gruesome scene. Andre's method was even bloodier than Anduin's. They managed to hold back their nausea and did not vomit on the spot. The phoenix in the sludge fountain grew anxious upon seeing Andre's attack. Despite increasing the speed of throwing the undead, it couldn't stop the advance of the blade storm. Soon, the area around the door was completely cleared of undead. Seeing a brief vacuum in front of the portal, Anduin shouted, "It's now!" He poured supercharged wild thunder magic into his legs and leaped forward with all his strength, rushing straight ahead. He trusted that Andre could control his magic well and didn't worry about the blade storm hurting him. The opportunity was fleeting, and waiting for Andre to stop his magic could allow the Nether Guards to regroup. Although it was the first time Anduin and Andre had cooperated in actual combat, they immediately understood each other's intentions. The other party's shout echoed through the chamber. The circling blades moved to the sides as if driven by invisible arms, perfectly complementing Anduin's cutting. Reaching an extreme speed, Anduin's forward motion transformed into a series of light blue afterimages. In an instant, he covered the 10-meter distance and arrived at the portal. With a swift motion, he split the two undead that had just appeared in front of him using his swift sword. Then, he activated the space-blocking talisman in his left hand and threw it into the sludge fountain. After completing this sequence of actions, Anduin didn't pause. He immediately took 2 steps back. Closing the portal with the space-blocking amulet was only a hypothesis. Its effectiveness remained to be seen. Additionally, he was uncertain if interrupting this bizarre summoning ceremony would trigger any strange reactions. Caution was paramount. As the talisman hit the sludge fountain, the continuously flowing sludge abruptly stopped, as if frozen in time. No more ghost. Guards emerged from it. Boom! Before anyone could react to the abnormal scene, the frozen sludge fountain suddenly exploded. Black mud splashed outward, revealing Phoenix hidden within. Despite being submerged in the mud earlier, her body remained impeccably clean, as if the black mud had no effect on her. However, her face had turned extremely pale, indicating that the summoning ceremony had taken a significant toll on her. Seeing that her costly summoning magic had failed to stop the 2 people in front of her, Phoenix was furious. "What an Andre! What a Schmidt family! I curse you! Go to hell!" Before Phoenix could finish her curse, Anduin kicked her hard. Simultaneously, he threw his sword forward with a backhand motion. The blade pierced Phoenix directly, pinning her to the wall. Anduin had no habit of engaging in unnecessary dialogue with enemies, especially not with someone as dangerous as Phoenix. Her methods were too unpredictable, and he feared that any delay could lead to unforeseen consequences. Pinned to the wall, Phoenix hadn't completely lost consciousness. Apart from the excruciating pain from the electric shock coursing through her body, she felt an overwhelming sense of grievance. Yes, grievance. She had been in the magical world for many years and had never experienced such a suffocating battle. Why did this little bastard in front of her never let people finish talking? End of this chapter. Chapter 570, taking the initiative to win over the long sword, Annihilation, pierced Phoenix's chest, pinning her to the stone wall. Blood continuously oozed from her wound and mouth, dripping down her smooth skin, torso, and bare feet, staining the wall and floor behind her red. Despite her dire situation, Phoenix struggled to stretch out her hands, grasping the long sword that had impaled her, desperately trying to pull it out. Anduin's throw had been powerful, and Annihilation was still emitting stinging electric shocks. The permanent energy absorption curse attached to the sword was also continuously draining Phoenix's magic. Her actions grew weaker until she almost lost the strength to even raise her hands. As her life gradually faded, Phoenix was filled with hatred. She despised the fact that she could have lived for so long, experienced so many wonderful things, and studied so much interesting magic. Was this really the end for her? She blamed these people. Phoenix glared at Anduin with bloodshot eyes, wanting to use her last strength to cast the most vicious curse she knew. As a witch who had studied forbidden black magic for years, she knew at least 10 curses that could be cast at the cost of life or soul. But this bastard in front of her didn't even let her say her last words before she died. What made her even more desperate was that with the extraction of her magic power and the loss of vitality, her youthful skin began to age rapidly. Wrinkles and age spots emerged from her skin. Perhaps this was another side effect of the forbidden elixir. Not long after, she had turned into a skinny old woman with gray hair and a wrinkled body, a stark contrast to her previous appearance as a 20-year-old girl. No. No. Looking at her old hands, now almost turned into dry bones, Phoenix let out a final moan of despair. She couldn't accept that she would die in such an ugly state, but her consciousness gradually separated from her body, leaving only her hideous face. Andre and the others slowly approached, watching Phoenix transform from a young girl into an old woman, and finally, take her last breath. Ahem. Andre took a weak breath and coughed a few times. It seems that I am really old, getting so tired after a little exercise. He shook his head in displeasure. But the old hag Phoenix was really powerful. Her spells and herself were so strange. Anduin knew that Andre was referring to the abnormality of Phoenix's rapid aging. It was not surprising to have such thoughts when one didn't know about the elixir. Seeing that Andre was losing strength, Anduin took a bottle of tonic from his body and handed it over. You saw that the spell she used was difficult to deal with. This person who studies black magic in order to maintain her appearance must have used some weird magic. Andre took the potion, took a big gulp, then nodded. Yes, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed that the young and beautiful woman before was Phoenix, one of the founders of the club. Otherwise, we might have been deceived by her. When she emerged from the mud just now, was she going to cast a curse on us? Fortunately, you acted decisively enough. Indeed, when facing such a dangerous person, you can't relax at all. Anduin looked around and sighed helplessly. It's a pity that no one was left alive, and we almost failed. This was a hasty move, but fortunately, we succeeded in the end. Thanks to your quick response, you caught her in time, Andre acknowledged. Anduin jokingly praised himself, then looked at the mess in front of him with a sigh. It's a good house, but now we've turned it into a battlefield full of holes, and it's even turning into a swamp, he complained. Andre struggled to pull his shoe out of several inches of rotting flesh, then rubbed it against the wall in disgust. Seeing this, Anduin shook his head. The Aurors responsible for cleaning up the mess would have a tough job ahead. He turned his attention back to Phoenix. There were probably many valuable items on this ancient Sork, heiress, such as the props that helped her escape at critical moments. But she had responded hastily, so other valuable items should still be in the bedroom on the 3rd floor. It was time to count the spoils. Thinking of this, Anduin approached Phoenix's corpse. To prevent any last tricks, he didn't touch the body immediately. Instead, he cast a few spells in the air, Detect Malice and Detection Curse, to ensure there were no hidden dangers. Once he was sure, he pulled the sword, Desolation, out of her chest. Holding the hilt, he could feel a sense of power swelling within it. Clearly, after absorbing Phoenix's life and magic, Desolation had grown stronger. Anduin realized the danger of the situation. The rest of the team had been relatively far away and were distracted by Phoenix's sudden transformation, so they hadn't noticed the sword's peculiarities. Otherwise, they might have grown suspicious of such a bloodthirsty weapon. After securing Desolation, Anduin inspected Phoenix's body. She carried almost nothing except her wand and a necklace around her neck, not counting the tattered nightdress. The pendant that had saved her at a critical moment was now just a broken chain and buckle. The black gemstone that had been inlaid in the buckle was shattered, its magic spent. Perhaps the wreckage could be analyzed to decipher the spell it had contained. After packing up Phoenix's corpse and relics, Anduin put away Desolation and turned around. The Schmidt brothers, who had been hiding in the back, approached, looking pale. Anduin was puzzled. These two had seemed to be playing it safe the whole time, so why did they look so shaken? Nonetheless, he said thoughtfully, "Thank you for your hard work tonight. We've dealt with Phoenix. The rest can be handled by the Aurors." He then turned to Andre. "Mr. Andre, please inform the Aurors outside. I need to go to the 3rd floor to see if I can find any clues among Phoenix's belongings." Andre understood that Anduin wanted to claim some benefits from Phoenix's possessions. He had no objections. His main goal tonight was to deal with Phoenix, and the operation had been initiated by Anduin. Anduin had contributed the most, so any spoils rightfully belonged to him. Edmund and Alan also had no objections. They found Anduin's hard work everyone comment ironic. They had been mere spectators for most of the fight, unable to contribute against a wizard of Phoenix's caliber. Anduin and Andre had handled everything, and their only task was not to get in the way. Edmund couldn't help but take another look at Anduin and Andre. They had witnessed true power tonight. Anduin's astonishing thunder and sword skills, and Andre's devastating blade storm, had opened their eyes to what real strength looked like. If they were alone, Demon might not last 10 seconds. Regarding this, Edmund also said very sincerely, "Mr. Wilson, you are too polite. We did not help you at all during this trip. Instead, it was up to you two to kill Feng Wang, the murderer of my child. I should be thanking you, not talking about hard work. And in order to repay the kindness of you both, we will carefully consider the position of our family. From now on, you two will be our friends. We will treat friends with the utmost support. Mr. Wilson, Director Andre, if you need any help in the future, please feel free to ask." Edmund's words were quite straightforward, without the previous feeling of beating around the bush. Even Andre could tell that the Schmidt family was ready to fully support him in the follow-up actions. Edmund made such a decision on behalf of the Schmidt family, not only because he was impressed by the strength of the two, but also after careful consideration. First of all, the strength displayed by the two is indeed the most attractive point. It is definitely not a loss to spend resources to make friends with strong individuals for the family, especially with Andre and Anduin, who are very powerful wizards. At the same time, what impressed him even more was Anduin's performance. Edmund had never seen such intelligence, firm and efficient action, and strong command ability in someone so young. Edmund could easily imagine that Anduin's future achievements would be limitless, and now he had the chance to make friends with him on a more equal basis. If he waited until later, the Schmidt family might not be able to approach him as easily. Therefore, Edmund naturally would not give up the present opportunity. It was really worth it to connect with a strong individual like Anduin for the family. For this reason, he even lowered his status and behaved quite modestly. Seeing this, Anduin and Andre were naturally very happy. After all, with the full support of the Schmidt family, it was equivalent to holding nearly half of the power of the German Wizengamot Council in their hands. They would no longer be alone in their endeavors. End of this chapter. Chapter 571, Harvest. After finishing the conversation with Anduin and Andre, the Schmidt brothers left the scene ahead of time. The environment was almost indescribably horrific, with a strong stench of decay. Edmund resolved to burn all the clothes he was wearing once he returned home, fearing they might give him nightmares. On the other side, Andre called the Aurors to start the cleanup. One team was tasked with returning the Muggles to their homes and erasing their short-term memories, while another team entered the Phoenix's residence to restore it with magic. The Aurors were deeply concerned about the situation on the battlefield. The battle between Anduin and the Phoenix had been intense, with explosions and magical fluctuations causing violent vibrations that could be felt from the ground. Despite their worries, they performed their duties well, containing the sound and vibrations within a small area to avoid disturbing the surrounding Muggle community. When the Aurors finally entered the scene, they were shocked by the devastation. The ground from the first to the third floor was essentially destroyed, and the basement resembled a scene from hell. This gave them a new understanding of the Phoenix's terrifying power. While the Aurors were cleaning up the basement, enduring the dirt and stench, Anduin returned to the Phoenix's bedroom on the third floor. After a brief search, he quickly found a space bag faintly exuding magical power. The bag had a very retro appearance, resembling a luxurious lady's satchel made of solid-color leather and silver metal parts. Upon closer inspection, Anduin identified the materials as black dragon skin of the Hebrides and fairy ulam steel. The high-quality materials suggested that the bag's internal space was likely substantial. The bag featured a switching gear on the outside, allowing it to switch between an ordinary lining and a space pocket. This function was very convenient, similar to the one Anduin had in his suitcase, which he had learned from Newt's school suitcase. In the ordinary lining, Anduin found common Muggle items such as German and French currency and cosmetics. However, when he tried to open the space pocket, he discovered a magic lock that required a specific frequency of magical power to unlock. Seeing this, Anduin was thrilled. The complex anti-theft measures indicated that the Phoenix highly valued the items inside, suggesting their significant worth. As an alchemist, Anduin found the magic lock to be a minor obstacle. After a bit of fiddling, he successfully cracked it. Upon opening the space pocket, Anduin's eyes lit up. The sight before him made him feel that the trip had been worthwhile. The magic bag's space was incredibly large, nearly 1,000 cubic meters, even larger than his space ring. More than half of it was filled, making it almost equivalent to a small warehouse. Eager to take stock, Anduin began to inventory and classify the contents in the bedroom. The first thing that caught his eye was a pile of golden galleons. After a rough count, he estimated there were at least 10,000 of them. With so much money, Anduin wondered if the Phoenix had taken all her wealth with her. In addition to the galleons, there were numerous other valuable items. Anduin examined the contents of the space bag, starting with the living materials, which included clean water and enough food to last at least a month. These items occupied the largest portion of the internal space. He quickly glanced over them and set them aside. Next, he found various magical materials, including a large quantity of herbs, byproducts from magical animals such as skin, teeth, and bones, and different types of magical metals. The sheer volume of these materials was comparable to Anduin's own inventory. From this, Anduin deduced that Phoenix must be a wizard proficient in potions and alchemy, as an ordinary person would not need to store so many raw materials. The abundance of these materials alone made Anduin feel satisfied, knowing that his own inventory had effectively doubled. Further discoveries confirmed Anduin's earlier judgment. If the raw materials weren't enough to prove Phoenix's expertise, the vast number of finished and semi-finished products certainly did. He pulled out various potions from the space bag, including Buffy's Brain Refreshing Potion and Blessing Potion, both of which are extremely difficult to prepare. He also found numerous poisons, cursed potions, and potions with severe side effects, like Blood Potion, which outnumbered the regular potions. This indicated that Phoenix had a particular interest in studying these dangerous concoctions. In addition to potions, Anduin found many semi-finished and finished alchemy props. One of the first items he recognized was the Infernal Corpse Summoning Bag, a powerful prop that Phoenix possessed in multiples. Other alchemy props were equally dangerous and intriguing, such as various cursed jewelry. These items had a range of effects, from causing diseases to inducing death, madness, lethargy, and other negative states. As Anduin continued his inspection, he found several alchemy props that could be used actively. One item resembled a perfume bottle. When activated and thrown, it would explode and release a corrosive, colorless, poisonous miasma, similar to an enhanced gas bomb with exaggerated power and area of effect. Another peculiar item was a handheld makeup mirror. When not activated, it appeared as a retro makeup mirror, but once infused with magic, it could severely corrode anything it illuminated. Anduin nearly fell victim to this device during his inspection, but avoided harm by not holding it up to his face. After sorting through all the alchemy equipment in Phoenix's reserve, Anduin breathed a sigh of relief. He realized how fortunate they were that their sudden attack had not given Phoenix much time to react. If she had used these props, their battle would have been far more challenging. This experience reinforced Anduin's cautious approach towards Phoenix, unlike his encounters with Thunderbird. Thunderbird, though powerful and domineering, relied on straightforward, overwhelming magic. His disdain for alchemy props made him a simpler opponent, allowing Anduin to face him alone. However, Phoenix's arsenal of strange and dangerous methods made her a much more formidable foe. Anduin had never intended to confront her alone, and his discoveries validated his concerns. Without understanding the functions of the equipment in Phoenix's possession, it was entirely possible that he could be overwhelmed suddenly. After a moment of reflection, Anduin composed himself and continued to sort through Phoenix's relics. The remaining items immediately excited him, as he discovered a vast array of written materials, enough to fill a large bookshelf. This discovery made Anduin's eyes light up. For him, materials and money were mere external objects that could be collected, but only knowledge could truly aid him directly. He immediately began to roughly check and classify these materials. Soon, Anduin divided them into 3 categories. A small portion was completely useless to him, but not without value, as they were documents related to the Silver Spear. These included records of black market materials belonging to the French branch, personnel lists, warehouse inventories, addresses, and other information. Additionally, there were German documents, such as information on East German civil society organizations Phoenix had personally contacted, lists of personnel, files on key individuals, records of previous actions, and briefings. These documents revealed the extent of the club's infiltration into German political and business circles, with many prominent names among them. Although these documents were useless to Anduin, they were a windfall for Andre. With this information, Andre could more effectively target the club, and the data alone served as powerful evidence. The remaining information was highly valuable to Anduin. The first thing that caught his eye was a large number of rare magic books and manuscripts, many of which were unique and previously unknown to him. Most of these books were related to alchemy, potions, and black magic. There were even extensive materials on soul and thought, which Anduin found extremely precious. In his eyes, their value surpassed the sum of all the materials and supplies he had discovered earlier. The final portion of the data was the smallest, but also highly valuable, as it consisted of Phoenix's personal research notes. A brief glance revealed numerous potion formulas invented by Phoenix, design drawings for alchemical props, and original spells he had developed. Among these were the spells Elegy of Soul and Shadow of Destruction, which Anduin had encountered before. End of this chapter. Chapter 572, Notes, Seeking Monthly Ticket Recommendation, Shadow of Destruction. This spell is somewhat similar to an enhanced version of the Corrosion Curse. Not only is it more powerful, but it also possesses the characteristics of silence and invisibility. However, this spell should ideally be used in conjunction with an alchemy item called Matte Dust. Anduin discovered a significant amount of this equipment during a previous inventory. These items are metal cans resembling small wine bottles. Upon inspection, Anduin found that these containers were quite ordinary, except for their ability to automatically explode when thrown. This type of alchemy equipment is very similar to smoke bombs, but the spreading matte dust has a stronger shielding effect on vision and also some sensory blocking functions. Once covered, it is almost equivalent to being blind, as the eyes will perceive only pitch blackness. Additionally, it has strong wind resistance, making it difficult to disperse with an ordinary hurricane spell. One must wait for its natural precipitation. Phoenix's notes and letters clearly recorded that this lightless dust should be used in conjunction with Destruction Shadow. In battle, one should first use lightless dust to obscure the enemy's vision, then cast the silent and invisible Destroy Shadow spell. This combination is a formidable weapon for ambushes. The other spell, Elegy of Soul, is a large-scale AoE, Area of Effect, magic. To use this spell, one must collect enough souls in advance and store them in either their body or a container. When cast, it first emits a scream that directly impacts the soul. This scream forms a compound attack with sound waves and soul energy, causing triple effects of fear, repulsion, and spiritual assault on enemies within at least a 50-meter radius. Following this, all the souls stored in the caster's body are released, forming multiple soul aggregates that autonomously seek out and attack enemies. These soul aggregates not only possess attack characteristics such as corrosion and fear, but also have the ability to split. After receiving a devastating blow, a soul aggregate will self-destruct and then split into multiple smaller soul aggregates, continuing to harass the enemy. If Anduin hadn't acted decisively before and cast the extremely powerful Wild Thunder to annihilate those souls, these soul aggregates could have entangled the group of wizards for a long time, even if they couldn't cause casualties. However, after reading the detailed description of Elegy of Soul, Anduin realized that the power of the spell previously cast by Phoenix was not at its full potential. The strength of this magic is not only limited by the caster's determination and magical control, but also significantly depends on the number of souls sealed in advance. Anduin then turned his attention to the pile of alchemy props he had sorted out earlier and took out several urns made of magical metal. During his previous inspection, Anduin found that these urns had the function of storing souls, but he hadn't figured out why Phoenix kept these souls at the time, so he set them aside. Now, it seems that these urns are the casting materials for Elegy of the Soul. Phoenix likely had to rely on the souls sealed within her body to cast the spell in a hurry. If she had these urns back then, the power of Elegy of Soul would have been terrifying. Whether it is Shadow of Destruction or Elegy of Soul, both spells require alchemy props or casting materials to exert their full effects. But even without these materials, Phoenix was still incredibly difficult to deal with, making Anduin realize once again the significant gap between him and these ancient, powerful beings. Anduin couldn't tell how many years had passed. Most of his strength was reflected in his equipment. If he were only given a magic wand, his performance might not be as impressive as Phoenix's tonight. However, the magic notes he acquired were indeed valuable. The spell, Elegy of the Soul, was particularly intriguing, though it had its dangers. It required spiritual contact with souls, which made it a risky magic to learn. Anduin decided not to learn it himself. However, the knowledge and information he extracted from the talisman gave him a glimpse into the esoteric category of soul magic. Other items like Lightless Dust and Destruction Shadow were practical and could be immediately useful. The Lightless Dust was especially interesting. Anduin had long considered creating a prop similar to smoke bombs for tactical equipment. He knew from experience that ordinary smoke was not very effective in wizard battles. The Misty Cloud spell could cover vision, but it was easily dispelled by a hurricane curse. Moreover, wizards with good magic power perception could still detect their opponents. With Lightless Dust, Anduin could create a true tactical smoke bomb. The thought of new equipment coming to the market made him happy. After calming down, Anduin reviewed Phoenix's information again. Phoenix's research in the field of soul and death was very advanced, almost at a master's level. This expertise was reflected in her strength and had evolved into various strange spells and large armies of corpses and undead. Anduin learned that the seemingly infinite ghost corpses and ghost guards had limits. These undead were created by Phoenix using corpses collected over more than 100 years through killing enemies, tomb robbery, and wars. Phoenix had experienced World War I and World War II, with Germany being a main warring country. Her notes detailed how easy it was to obtain corpses for experiments. She could simply go to a concentration camp in Germany and choose from piles of corpses, even selecting based on body shape and size. Phoenix often complained in her notes that German soldiers starved the prisoners, making the corpses fragile. After processing the collected corpses, Phoenix turned them into the yin corpses and nether guardians that Anduin had seen. She also built a large-scale corpse-raising place to store these corpses. When needed, she could summon them and convert them into combat power. The summoning ceremony, whether through self-sacrifice or in fairy summoning bags, was just a portal to the corpse ranch. This corpse ranch was far away, and even a one-way portal required casting materials for summoning. Phoenix's main motivation for studying soul and death was to find a way to achieve true immortality. Unlike others in her circle who naively believed in the elixir of life, Phoenix never thought true immortality could be achieved so simply. She thought it was foolish to entrust her life to others. At the same time, she felt that the elixir might have its own limitations, so she couldn't trust it completely. In the Phoenix Notes, it is recorded, "The adoptive father said he would give us true eternal life, but if eternal life means becoming his ghost, it proves that the so-called elixir is nothing more than that. We still took the potion given by our father, half voluntarily and half forced. The irritable Gerald almost turned against our father because of this, but in the end, we couldn't refuse. The effect of the elixir is even more amazing than I imagined. I feel like I am 20 years old again. Whether it is appearance or physical function, this feeling is truly intoxicating. However, I must keep reminding myself that the elixir is absolutely untrustworthy. If I don't want to become like my father, I need to find another way out." Why do the so-called methods of achieving eternal life in history turn people into neither human nor ghost, and why are they so flawed? Horcruxes, a means of entrusting the soul to foreign objects, are simply extremely foolish. Don't the inventors of Horcruxes know that all objects will gradually decay over time? Even holy artifacts can only last for thousands of years. What I want is true eternal life, not a lifespan of a few hundred years by splitting the soul. Is the only thing that can achieve immortality without side effects the Philosopher's Stone? But the only known Philosopher's Stone in the world is in the hands of Nick Flamel, a legendary wizard who has lived longer than my father. How can I get it? It is said that my father exchanged several pieces of LeMay alloy from Nick Flamel back then. I don't know if he still has contact with Nick now. Nick Flamel could be in France, my father is very sure. I'm going to France too. It's been 20 years. Why can't I find him? Is this road really impossible? Sorcerer's Stone. Even if it's just for me to take a look at you, it feels like after so many years of research, I have truly reached a dead end. Isn't immortality the renunciation of death and the eternal existence of the soul? Or is there another explanation? God, recently, I actually had the idea of making a Horcrux for myself. I feel that the side effects of the elixir have begun to appear slowly. It is gradually making me stupid. Splitting my soul will only make me incomplete and more fragile. I am afraid that only the products of inbreeding will chase after the cerebral palsy Horcrux. End of this chapter. Chapter 573, Political Art. After reading Phoenix's notes, Anduin fell into deep thought. The amount of information revealed in these notes was substantial. Phoenix seemed to have an obsession with longevity, and had been exploring various methods to achieve immortality, including Horcruxes and the Philosopher's Stone. Phoenix's interest in these methods stemmed not only from the lack of a formula for the elixir, but also from her observations of the rune snake. She had noticed that using the elixir seemed to have significant side effects. This raised questions about the current state of the rune snake. Anduin deduced that the side effects of the elixir might take time to manifest, as Phoenix and Thunderbird appeared normal. The elixir's characteristics were more evident in the rune snake. It seems that meeting the rune snake must be prioritized, Anduin mused, at least to understand the true nature of the other party. However, given the current situation of the club, Jin Snidget may not be interested in the rune snake. Bringing it up now might be inappropriate. After pondering for a while, Anduin nodded firmly. I need to put more pressure on the club, forcing them into a corner. I don't believe the rune snake can remain so composed. With a plan in mind, Anduin gathered all of Phoenix's relics. This hunting operation had been a significant success, both strategically and in terms of tangible gains. After organizing everything, Anduin took the club materials he had obtained from Phoenix and sought out Andre and Moody, who were still cleaning up the aftermath. Upon reading the documents, Andre and Moody were elated. With these, we have a stronger case against the club, Andre said, his expression darkening as he examined the documents. They contained not only lists of personnel from civil organizations, but also numerous wizards who had been recruited by the club, many of whom held high-ranking positions. Our focus now is on the warehouse base, Anduin instructed Moody. We need to expedite our progress. Moody nodded. I'll ensure our wizards are ready. We need to gather information on the individuals listed in these documents, but avoid any surveillance actions for now to prevent alerting them. Agreed, Anduin replied. We need to make sure those wizards feel the pressure. They won't remain calm when they realize their end is near. Moody, who had been frustrated by his limited role in the previous battle, was eager to take action. I'll deal with those prisoners once we return to the warehouse camp, he said with a fierce grin. Andre, equally determined, added, we won't let these traitors go unpunished. Colluding with outsiders to cause trouble in our country is unacceptable. Anduin, sensing Andre's intentions, quickly intervened. No, Andre, we're not collecting information to arrest them all. We need to control them for our purposes. Andre's eyes widened in disbelief. You mean to keep these scoundrels after we clear Pete out of the club? These people are either influential businessmen or officials in the Ministry of Magic, even members of the Wizengamot. They're a menace. Anduin shook his head. If we eliminate all of them at once, it could cause more harm. We need to be strategic. Andre, though reluctant, understood the necessity of Anduin's plan. All right, but we must ensure they can't cause further damage. Anduin nodded. We'll handle this carefully. Our goal is to dismantle the club's influence while maintaining stability. With their plan set, the group prepared to take the next steps in their mission, determined to outmaneuver their adversaries and secure a better future. Anduin comforted him patiently. As you can see, the people listed in the files were mostly recruited by the club through bribery or coercion. Many of them are key figures in the German magical community. If you really want to deal with them, what should you do? Should you imprison them all or expel them from the Ministry of Magic? Anduin continued. You have to understand that once we confront Pete and remove his faction from the ministry, there will be a significant number of vacancies. If we also target these individuals, how many staff members do you think will be left? Are you confident you can replace them quickly? Andre pondered Anduin's words and realized they made sense, though he was still reluctant. So, should we just let these guys off lightly? They're all ungrateful opportunists and not trustworthy at all. I never said to forgive them easily, Anduin replied with a sly grin. These individuals can't be trusted with important responsibilities, but they are still influential officials within the ministry. Removing them suddenly could cause chaos. What I suggest is using the information you have to force them into submission. Offer them a chance to redeem themselves by supporting you, ensuring the ministry continues to function smoothly. Once the situation in the German magical world stabilizes and you have enough reliable replacements, you can deal with them as you see fit. Politics is the art of compromise, after all. The art of politics? Andre, though straightforward, was not foolish. He recognized that Anduin's suggestion was indeed the most practical for both him and the stability of the German magical community. Hey, what you said makes sense, Andre sighed. The damage the Silver Spear has inflicted on the German magical world over the past decade is deeply ingrained. Half of the ministry's staff are Pete's people. I wanted to cut ties quickly, but it seems that's not feasible. Maybe I'm not suited for the position of Minister of Magic. Are you an idiot? The problem lies with the Silver Spear, not you. Moody, hearing his old friend's lament, became angry. The club has caused too much harm. People like you need to step up. Otherwise, can you trust the ministry to anyone else? You're the one managing the Ministry of Magic. Your job is to lead, to strengthen the resolve of those under you, and to restore confidence in the German magical community. If you find it difficult, ask for help. I'm sure Anduin and Minister Budnor will support you. Yeah, I get it now. After Moody's scolding, Andre seemed to wake up. He then turned to Anduin, who had been tirelessly helping him. Anduin, if in the future, after we've cleared the club's influence from Germany, would you consider helping me? I've known from the start that without your advice, we wouldn't have achieved such success in such a short time. I don't know if you'd be willing to join the German Ministry of Magic. Fearing Anduin's refusal, Andre quickly added, I know you're also managing Silver Flash Trading Company. I won't restrict you too much. I just hope you can stay in Germany for a while to help the ministry through this difficult period. You can choose any position, like the director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Hey, Moody interjected, hearing Andre's proposal. Andre immediately became unhappy. How can you try to recruit our British people right in front of me? Is there a mistake? Aren't I in a hurry? Andre's tone softened, and he even managed a rare friendly smile towards Moody and Anduin. Anduin just smiled in response. Director Andre, it's not the time to think about these things yet. Are you thinking too far ahead? Haha, since I met you, every operation you've arranged has been completed smoothly. I'm not being complacent. I just have absolute confidence in you. Andre said, disregarding the age gap and starting to flatter Anduin. I'm sorry. I appreciate your kindness, Anduin said, shaking his head resolutely after a moment of thought. From the beginning, I never intended to go into politics. Andre's expression turned a bit disappointed, but he understood that with Anduin's potential, he wouldn't limit himself to just one country's Ministry of Magic. However, Anduin continued after taking a deep breath. If the pressure on the German Ministry of Magic becomes too great in the future, I can stay in Germany temporarily for a period of time, say 6 months to a year. After all, Silver Flash Trading Company still has a lot of business in Europe that I need to handle. During this period, I can help you with ideas, but I won't join the Ministry of Magic. That's okay, Andre exclaimed, overjoyed. He knew his own thinking wasn't suited for management, so he especially hoped someone could guide him. In Andre's eyes, Anduin was the perfect candidate. Since you don't want to go into politics, I can give you the status of an advisor to the Minister of Magic. You can share your ideas with me directly, Andre said, as if he were already the Minister of Magic, appointing Anduin on the spot. Consultant? Anduin shook his head, amused. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for me to be a consultant given my position as the head of a British company. It wouldn't be good for your reputation. However, it would be fine for me to be a temporary instructor in your legal enforcement department. That way, I can also train some aurors for you. Of course, the most important thing is to let those aurors serve as subjects for my experiments, Anduin added in his mind. End of this chapter. Chapter 574, Prison Situation. The next day, inside the warehouse prison, Nathan squatted in the corner of the cell, looking as depressed as usual. The wizards from the breeding park had been confined in this closed prison for more than half a month. During this time, they had endured the filthy environment that couldn't be cleaned. The stench was so pervasive that they eventually lost their sense of smell, adapting passively to the squalor. The monotonous diet of boiled potatoes day after day left everyone feeling overwhelmed. Even the weekly apple, a rare treat, brought mixed feelings of emotion and grievance. Only in those moments did they truly feel the value of freedom. Despite the desperate environment, the prison maintained a relatively peaceful atmosphere, though this was only relative. Over time, the wizards and muggles became familiar with the characteristics of the guards. As long as they refrained from making inflammatory remarks, loud noises, fighting, or quarreling, the Silver Spears, who were always invisible, did not overly restrict their speech. This allowed the prisoners to communicate and become familiar with each other, gradually piecing together the events that led to their imprisonment. Their past experiences were strikingly similar. They were mostly ordinary wizards living in various wizarding areas, with no significant background and varying spellcasting abilities. What they had in common was their familiarity with people from non-governmental organizations in the gathering areas. They had been bewitched by these people to join the breeding park and become employees. Those with excellent grades in the protection of magical animals became veterinarians in the park after training, while most of the rest were assigned to the maintenance team. They also learned that although they belonged to different parks, the internal configuration, layout, and even the personnel salaries were very consistent. This led them to conclude that all the parks were part of the Silver Spear Club, suggesting that the various folk groups that introduced them to the parks had unclear connections with the club. This realization sparked many associations. Many non-governmental organizations in Germany were in similar situations, all seemingly under the control of the Silver Spear. Among the prisoners, there were some sharp minds. They quickly connected the dots to the splitting incidents in the German wizarding world over the past 10 years, all pointing to the same result. The division of Germany was orchestrated by the folk groups dominated by the Silver Spear. The most exasperating part was that the patrol team members, collaborators of the club, admitted this openly. Many of them ridiculed the prisoners for being so easily manipulated into becoming the Silver Spear's secret accomplices. In the minds of these collaborators, they and the civilian wizards were never in the same group. They believed that when the time came, they would be released by the Silver Spear and become noble collaborators again. This belief intensified the conflict between the civilian wizards and the patrol wizards in the prison, leading to several clashes in just a dozen days. Of course, such quarrels or fights were quickly stopped by the Silver Spears, and the participants were thrown back into their original cells after being punished. Despite the situation, the patrol wizards continued to regard themselves as superior. His name was Old Tom, a civilian wizard who had been imprisoned for many years. He was frail and often sick, and the harsh conditions of the prison had taken a toll on him. Nathan felt a pang of sympathy as he watched old Tom struggle to even sit up straight. "Jimmy, give me a moment," Nathan said, his voice softening. He walked over to old Tom and knelt beside him, offering one of the apples. "Here, old Tom, you need this more than I do." Old Tom looked up, his eyes filled with gratitude and surprise. "Thank you, Nathan," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I don't know how to repay you." Nathan shook his head. "No need for that. Just take care of yourself." As Nathan returned to his spot, he noticed Bob watching him with a thoughtful expression. "You're too kind for your own good," Bob remarked, though there was no malice in his tone. Nathan shrugged. "We have to look out for each other in here. It's the only way we'll survive." Bob nodded, but his eyes were still clouded with worry. "We need to focus on our escape. We can't afford to get too comfortable." Nathan sighed, knowing Bob was right. The fleeting moments of kindness and camaraderie were a small comfort, but they couldn't distract from the grim reality of their situation. They had to escape, and soon. The Silver Spears, their invisible jailers, were a constant threat. Nathan and Bob had spent countless hours practicing their spells, honing their skills in secret. The disillusionment charm was their best hope, allowing them to blend into their surroundings and move unseen. But the challenge was getting close enough to the fireplace, their planned escape route, without alerting the Silver Spears. Nathan's mind raced as he considered their options. The Silver Spears only appeared during mealtimes, which meant they had a narrow window to act. They needed a distraction, something that would draw the guards' attention away from the fireplace. "Bob," Nathan whispered, leaning closer. "We need a diversion, something big enough to keep the Silver Spears occupied while we make our move." Bob's eyes lit up with understanding. "I think I have an idea," he said, a hint of excitement in his voice. "But we'll need the help of the other prisoners." Nathan glanced around the cell, taking in the weary faces of his fellow inmates. They were all desperate for a way out, and he knew they would be willing to take the risk. "Let's do it," he said, determination hardening his resolve. Over the next few days, Nathan and Bob quietly spread the word among the prisoners, explaining their plan and enlisting their help. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and soon everyone was working together, preparing for the moment when they would make their bid for freedom. The day finally arrived. As the Silver Spears appeared to distribute the evening meal, the prisoners sprang into action. A loud commotion erupted at one end of the cell, drawing the guards' attention. Shouts and cries filled the air as the prisoners staged a convincing fight, creating the perfect distraction. Nathan and Bob, their forms shimmering with the disillusionment charm, slipped unnoticed towards the fireplace. Their hearts pounded in their chests as they moved swiftly and silently, every step bringing them closer to freedom. As they reached the fireplace, Nathan cast a quick glance back at the chaos behind them. The Silver Spears were fully occupied, trying to restore order among the prisoners. It was now or never. With a final, determined nod to Bob, Nathan stepped into the fireplace and whispered the incantation. Flames roared to life around them, and in an instant they were gone, leaving the prison and its horrors behind. The world spun around them, and when the flames finally subsided, Nathan and Bob found themselves standing in a dense forest, far from the prison. They had done it. They were free. Nathan took a deep breath, savoring the fresh air and the sense of liberation that washed over him. "We made it," he said, a smile breaking across his face. Bob grinned back, clapping Nathan on the shoulder. "We did, but this is just the beginning. We have a lot of work ahead of us." Nathan nodded, his eyes shining with determination. "I know, but for now, let's just enjoy this moment." And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Nathan allowed himself to hope. Old Willie was a familiar face in the Eastern Park, known for his kind demeanor and polite nature. He never caused trouble and was well liked by everyone in their cell. So, when Nathan noticed Old Willie crying, he couldn't help but feel concerned. "What's the matter? Why is Old Willie crying suddenly?" Nathan asked, leaning over to another wizard nearby. What else could it be? Seiko stole Old Willie's apple. "You know how Old Willie is? He doesn't know how to stand up for himself," the wizard replied, shaking his head and sighing. Nathan quickly understood the situation. Seiko was a patrol member who used to be in the same park with him and Jimmy. They had almost had a conflict before, but Nathan had managed to defuse it. Now, Seiko was eating the apple he had taken from old Willie, and when he saw Nathan and Jimmy looking over, he glared at them provocatively. "You bastard, always picking on the weak," Jimmy fumed, rolling up his sleeves and preparing to confront Seiko. Nathan immediately stopped him. "Don't be impulsive, Jimmy. There's no good in starting trouble. But look at him. He's a prisoner just like us, yet he bullies his fellow inmates. It's inhuman," Jimmy complained, trying to break free from Nathan's grip. "Jimmy," Nathan held him back firmly. "You won't help old Willie by beating Seiko up. You'll just get yourself punished. Don't be foolish. Listen to me." Frustrated, Jimmy shouted, "So we just let him do whatever he wants? We can't go on like this." Nathan sighed helplessly. "We're all prisoners here, locked in a cage. It's hard enough to take care of ourselves. Sooner or later, that guy will get what's coming to him." As if on cue, a silver spear gun suddenly appeared in the aisle of the prison center, and a loud voice commanded, "Everyone, listen to me." End of this chapter. Chapter 575, Loyalty Test. The silver spear that appeared again was naturally Moody. At this time, he still exuded the arrogance of a villain, yelling to attract everyone's attention. "I have some good news for you today," Moody announced, his voice amplified by a loud spell to reach every corner of the prison. "Soon, you won't have to stay in this damn place any longer. I hope everyone is mentally prepared." The news elicited varied reactions. The wizards who had once been partners of the club smiled, seeing this as a sign that they would soon be freed from their prisoner status and the accompanying suffering. The commoner wizards, though nervous, felt a slight relief, hoping that the new place would offer a better life than the tormenting prison. However, the more thoughtful wizards frowned. They knew the silver spears had no intention of setting them free, and they worried about their future. Nathan and Bob were particularly conflicted. They had been preparing for an escape for so long, and now they were suddenly told they would be moved. Would the new place offer any chance of escape, or would the control over them be even tighter? Everything was uncertain. Moody, standing in the center of the open space, paid no mind to their thoughts. He continued, "Don't worry, we've already renovated the new breeding park for you. The environment won't be worse than the one you're in now. But before we transfer you, we have to test your loyalty. Only those who are absolutely loyal can we safely let live and work in the new environment." "Loyalty? My lord, I am the most loyal. I have been serving the club for years," one wizard shouted. "Master Silver Spear, we will definitely dedicate our loyalty to the club. Don't worry," another chimed in. Moody's words had clearly struck a chord with the cooperating wizards in the prison. They believed that passing this loyalty test would grant them freedom. "That's good," Moody nodded in satisfaction. "Today, I will first select 10 people to experiment with the effect of the so-called loyalty test. Who is willing to sign up?" "Me. Choose me." "My lord, look here. I am willing to accept the test." Shouts erupted throughout the prison as the cooperating wizards eagerly volunteered, including Shike, who shared a cell with Nathan and Jimmy. They seemed to believe that the loyalty test would be beneficial to them. Moody nodded in satisfaction and casually pointed towards the crowd, selecting the wizards who had been most attentive to the club. Nathan was surprised to see that Shike was among those chosen. As Shike was released, he even shot a proud look at Nathan and Jimmy. "My God, is this a world where good people don't get rewarded? A bastard like Shike can still regain his freedom. I can already imagine how he will make things difficult for us in the future," Jimmy muttered resentfully. "Don't jump to conclusions. Let's wait and see." "I don't think things are that simple," Nathan replied, frowning. He sensed strong malice and suspected that the loyalty test was not as straightforward as it seemed. As Nathan and Jimmy whispered to each other, the selected wizards, including Shike, were brought to Moody. Shike, brimming with excitement, spoke up. "My lord, tell us how we need to be tested. I guarantee that we will pass the test." "To kill someone on the spot to show our loyalty? I am fully prepared," Seiko declared, a ferocious smile spreading across his face. He glanced intentionally at Nathan and the others in the adjacent cell. Moody, observing their eagerness, smirked coldly. He knew they would suffer later, but he maintained his arrogant demeanor. "Are you an idiot? Everyone in this prison is an important asset to the club. If you kill someone, who will compensate me? Stand up." Startled by Moody's outburst, the wizards quickly composed themselves and lined up respectfully in front of him. "The so-called loyalty test is very simple," Moody said with a teasing smile. "There are traitors among you, and we don't have time to identify them. So, we will ensure your brains are filled with thoughts of loyalty to the club. If you pass this test, you are considered loyal." A wave of confusion swept through the group of wizards. They exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of what Moody meant. Ignoring their bewilderment, Moody drew his wand and pointed it at Seiko, who had been trying to curry favor with him. "Forget it all," Moody commanded. A light blue stream of light shot from his wand, striking Seiko's head. In a bewitching voice, Moody chanted, "The Silver Spear Club is your master. Your life is dedicated to the club. You are the property of the club from birth. You must not doubt or question the orders given by your master." Moody intensified the spell, repeating the incantation several times to ensure its effectiveness. Seiko's expression turned vacant and confused. By the time Moody finished, Seiko had become almost mindless, muttering, "The Silver Spear Club is my master, and my life is dedicated to the club." "It seems to work well," Moody said, nodding in satisfaction. He then addressed Seiko. "From today on, you will be number one. Number one, squat down for me now. Yes. Next, get down, then stand up." Seiko, now referred to as number one, obeyed Moody's commands like a puppet, standing and squatting without hesitation. Witnessing Moody's actions, the other wizards and prisoners felt a chilling fear rise within them. Is this the so-called loyalty test? What kind of test is this? It's clearly brainwashing," one wizard beside Seiko stammered, his face pale. Moody laughed maniacally, his villainous nature fully unleashed. "Isn't ensuring your absolute loyalty the purpose of the loyalty test? Do you think I would trust a mere promise of loyalty? Look at how loyal number one is to the club now. He will undoubtedly work hard for us in the future. The experiment seems to be a success. Next." Moody slowly pointed his wand at the wizard next to Seiko, who turned pale and fell to his knees, begging, "My lord, please, don't do this. Even if you make us sign the strictest contract, don't turn me into a walking dead." "Stop talking nonsense. Do you think it's cost-effective to sign contracts with so many people?" Moody retorted coldly. "Don't struggle. You won't feel any pain after a while. Forget about it." Ignoring the wizard's pleas, Moody cast the spell, repeating the same process he had used on Seiko. This time, the new puppet was named number two. Realizing that Moody intended to brainwash them all, turning them into obedient puppets, the remaining wizards collapsed in despair. "No, please, I don't want to become like that," they cried out, but their pleas fell on deaf ears as Moody continued his ruthless process. "To be treated like this, like a ghost," one of the wizards cried out. "Silver Spears, you are so ungrateful. I've done so many dirty things for you all these years, and this is how you repay us?" The wizards were stunned. Some fell to the ground, wetting themselves in fear. Others begged for mercy, while a few cursed openly. The 10 selected cooperative wizards were among the most loyal to the club, having served for many years. Moody's actions were a cruel mockery of their dedication and loyalty. Unable to accept their fate, 2 wizards attempted to flee in terror. This ghostly place had become more terrifying than hell for them. But their struggles were in vain. They hadn't taken more than 2 steps before they were struck by a spell from a manifested silver spear. They fell heavily to the ground and were dragged back to Moody. Under the howls of the prisoners, more than 500 people in the prison watched the tragedy unfold. The leader's silver spear fired every minute, reducing the wizards who were once named to mere numbers. "Phew, it's tiring to maintain this kind of accuracy all the time. Let's stop here for now and continue tomorrow," Moody said, feigning exhaustion. He muttered casually, then glanced intentionally at Bob, who had previously talked back to him. Seeing this, Bob broke out in a cold sweat. Did this mean that Moody would target him tomorrow? Or hundreds of wizards in the prison were equally terrified. The distinction between cooperative wizards and ordinary wizards no longer mattered. Everyone was frightened by the Silver Spear's sneer. End of this chapter. Chapter 576. Prison Break in Progress. "Bob, did you see what happened today?" If we keep waiting, the consequences could be unimaginable. Nathan leaned against the cage, his voice urgent as he spoke to Bob. He glanced at Seiko, who had been thrown back into his cell, still wearing a blank expression that sent chills down Nathan's spine. Even Jimmy, who usually had a bone to pick with Seiko, sat pale and silent, too scared to approach. Today, Moody had shown everyone in the prison what true despair looked like. "I can't wait any longer," Bob said, his usual calm replaced by anxiety. "I noticed the leader's silver spear gave me a special look at the end. Considering what I did to offend him before, I'm afraid tomorrow's loyalty test will be my turn." "Do you mean we leave tonight?" Nathan's panic was evident. If everyone was going to be brainwashed by those silver spears, in a few days they would all become walking dead. Escaping would be impossible, and they might even forget their own names. "I'm afraid it's our only choice," Bob sighed sadly. "We're not fully prepared, but if we wait any longer, we'll lose our only chance at freedom." Nathan's eyes hardened with resolve. "Then let's do it. If I have to live like those brainwashed people, I'd rather die." "Let's act tonight," Bob agreed, though he still looked worried. "But we don't know the Silver Spear's hack patrol routes at night. Rushing directly to the target is too obvious, and the success rate is low." "I can help you," a voice suddenly interjected. Both men jumped, turning to see Jimmy standing by the cage. "Jimmy, why are you here?" Nathan asked, surprised. He and Bob usually communicated in cryptic ways, but today, in their haste, they hadn't noticed Jimmy approaching. "Captain, I've always known about your escape plans," Jimmy said, his face bitter, a far cry from his usual youthful cheerfulness. "I'm not a fool. You two whisper every couple of days, and the captain practices casting spells without a wand under the covers at night. I've noticed." "What?" Nathan was even more surprised, glancing at Bob before looking back at Jimmy. "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Why would I? If you could really escape, maybe you could bring someone to rescue us," Jimmy said with a wry smile. "I know I've been nothing but trouble for you, Captain, so when I learned about your plan, I didn't think about joining in. I didn't want to drag you down. All I could do was cover for you." "Jimmy." Nathan was touched by Jimmy's honesty. "You're a great guy. You haven't caused us any trouble, but you said you could help us. How? Are you planning to escape through the fireplace at night?" Jimmy seemed to have guessed their plan. "If you rush out like that, your chances of success are close to zero." "That's right. That's," Nathan admitted, trusting Jimmy as a companion. "But you have seen," Jimmy interrupted. "I know the Silver Spear's patrol routes. I've been observing them for weeks. If we time it right, we can avoid them and make it to the fireplace." Bob and Nathan exchanged a hopeful glance. "All right, Jimmy," Bob said. "Tell us what you know. Tonight, we make our move." The three of them huddled together, whispering their plans, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. Tonight, they would either regain their freedom or face the dire consequences of failure. The way those silver spears treated us. Even if the chance of success is not high, Bob and I plan to fight hard. Even if we are killed while trying to escape, it is better than turning into a motionless walking dead. Nathan and Bob exchanged a determined look, both seeing the resolve in each other's eyes. "So that's it. I always thought you, Captain, were a bit weak." "I didn't expect you to be the most courageous among us," Jimmy said, looking at Nathan and Bob with admiration. He then leaned in closer and whispered, "If I can help you attract the attention of some silver spears while you are running away, will your chances of escape be higher?" Attract their attention? Nathan was slightly taken aback by Jimmy's words. He stared at Jimmy with wide eyes. "You mean, but wouldn't you be in danger?" "Heh, as if we aren't in danger by staying here," Jimmy replied firmly, staring at Nathan. "I'll find a way to create a distraction tonight. You take that opportunity to run. If you manage to find someone to save us after you get out, that would be ideal. If not, take care of yourself. My efforts won't be in vain." "Jimmy?" Nathan's heart clenched, and he was almost choked with emotion. But Jimmy shook his head resolutely to stop him. "Captain, don't hesitate. Now is not the time to be indecisive. If you can escape, those of us still in prison will have hope of seeing the light of day again. If we continue to delay, what's the point of living?" Jimmy glanced at Seiko, who used to be the person he hated the most. Today's events made him feel sorry for him. Nathan settled down, exchanged a determined look with Bob, and then nodded firmly. Okay, let's do this. Jimmy, don't worry. As long as I get out, I'll go to the Ministry of Magic and seek the help of the Aurors. Ministry of Magic? Jimmy hesitated. After being here for so long, you should know the connections between those club partners and non-governmental organizations. They've been promoting the division of Germany. There may be some of their people in the Ministry of Magic. Is it really reliable to go directly to the ministry? No matter how powerful the club's silver spears are, people like Director Andre of the Legal Enforcement Department will definitely not join forces with them. As long as we find him, we have hope, Nathan said firmly. Andre's character was well known in the German magical world. Apart from his bad temper, he was known for his integrity. When Nathan mentioned his name, Jimmy and Bob nodded in conviction. Moody, who had been listening to their conversation from beside the cage, nodded in satisfaction. He wasn't afraid of them escaping. He was afraid they wouldn't try. Making up their minds was a good thing. The relationship between Jimmy and Nathan was truly strong. After hearing their heartfelt conversation, Moody was almost moved to guilt. Almost. That night, around midnight, many prisoners couldn't sleep. They couldn't help but think of the silver spears brainwashing those wizards. Some even woke up from nightmares. Amidst the anxiety, a sudden light appeared in the dark night. When they sat up and looked for the source, they found that a prison cell had caught fire. "It's on fire! It's on fire! Help!" A shrill cry resounded throughout the prison, followed by more shouts and noises. The fire had started in the cell where Jimmy and Nathan were. At first, it was just one of the quilts that had burst into flames, but when Jimmy threw the quilt, the flames quickly spread from the wooden toilet, igniting the adjacent cell. This unexpected incident sparked panic among the prisoners, causing even those far from the fire to shout and cry as if the end of the world was imminent. The entire prison soon became as chaotic as a bustling morning market. "Stop making noise. Quiet down, everyone. Hurry up and put out the fire. If I find out who did this, you will not be spared." The leader of the Silver Spears, who had suddenly appeared, shouted in a panic. A large number of silver spears emerged from their invisibility, gathering around the cell to cast spells and extinguish the fire. It became evident to the prisoners that there were significantly fewer guards at night than during the day. This realization emboldened many, and some even began shaking the steel railings, hoping to escape amidst the chaos. The prison descended further into disorder, but the Silver Spear leader quickly took control. With just a few cruciatus curses, he subdued several troublemakers, deterring the rest. The Silver Spears soon managed to bring the fire under control. However, neither the guards nor the noisy prisoners noticed that two invisible wizards had slipped out of their cells and were now near the fireplace. Nathan and Bob were surprised by how well Jimmy's plan had worked. They had only intended to use the fire to distract some of the Silver Spears. They never expected the fire to cause such widespread panic. With the Silver Spears preoccupied with extinguishing the fire and dealing with troublemakers, Nathan and Bob found themselves closer to the fireplace than they had anticipated. End of this chapter. Chapter 577, I'm All Acting. Please recommend a monthly ticket. Nathan and Bob found their escape journey surprisingly easy. Taking advantage of the dim light, they cast a disillusionment charm on themselves. When the prison was in brief chaos, they softened the cell bars with transfiguration and walked out effortlessly. The Silver Spears were preoccupied with fighting a fire and suppressing a wizard riot, allowing Nathan and Bob to reach the fireplace without incident. The ease of their escape felt almost dreamlike, but they had no time for sentimentality. As they approached the fireplace, Nathan and Bob grabbed a handful of flue powder and threw it into the hearth. Ministry of Magic. Nathan's entire body trembled with tension. To ensure he clearly enunciated their destination, he bit his tongue hard. As the words Ministry of Magic left his lips, he and Bob were engulfed in emerald green flames and vanished from the prison that had terrified them. Meanwhile, the Silver Spears remained oblivious to the nearby prison's activity. Jimmy, on the other side, had been monitoring the corner. When he saw the fireplace activate, he yelled mournfully, trying to draw the Silver Spear's attention and buy time for Nathan and Bob. Moody, not far away, observed the scene with amusement. If he hadn't known their plan in advance, he might have been fooled by their act. He glanced thoughtfully at the fireplace, hoping Andre's preparations were going smoothly. As the protagonist of this drama, Andre couldn't afford to falter now. Nathan and Bob were teleported to the hall of the German Ministry of Magic. They stumbled out of the fireplace, coughing violently. After being confined in the prison's stale air, the fresh air felt almost overwhelming. As they lay on the ground, gasping for breath, they heard footsteps approaching. The long-term high-pressure life had made Nathan and Bob extremely sensitive. They looked nervously towards the sound and saw two aurors on duty walking towards them. "Who are you? Don't you know it's late at night? Why are you trespassing in the Ministry of Magic at this hour?" The aurors, seeing two dirty, bearded figures emitting a foul smell, drew their wands and pointed them at Nathan and Bob. Don't hurt us. We're not bad people. We're here to ask for help." Nathan immediately raised his hands above his head, not wanting to be mistaken for a criminal just after escaping. "Help?" The aurors exchanged puzzled glances. "Hold your heads in your hands and stand up from the ground first." Nathan and Bob complied, and under the dim hall light, the aurors saw their disheveled appearance. Relieved to see they had no wands, the aurors began questioning them. "Who are you? Why do you look like Muggle homeless people? You said you came here for help? Is someone hurting you?" "That's right, Mr. Aurors. We have been kidnapped and imprisoned by villains," Nathan explained urgently. "Today, we escaped with great difficulty. As soon as we got away, we came straight to the Ministry of Magic for help." Nathan was very emotional, his voice breaking as he spoke. Tears streamed down his face uncontrollably. The immense pressure they had been under made it inevitable that he would lose control once they finally relaxed. "Don't panic. Tell me slowly. Who kidnapped you? Do you have any other companions?" The auror comforted them softly, seeing their pitiful state. "Yes, we have other companions, and the one who kidnapped us is Yin." Nathan began to reveal that they had been imprisoned by the silver spear gun, but Bob, standing next to him, suddenly placed a hand on his shoulder, stopping him. Nathan turned to Bob in confusion, but Bob's serious expression made him realize they couldn't directly mention the silver spear. They had learned in prison that the silver spear might have inexplicable connections with some people in the German Ministry of Magic. Although the two wizards in front of them were aurors, they couldn't be sure if these aurors were part of the same group. If they were, or if these aurors report Ed to those colluding with the club to avoid trouble, they would be jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Realizing this, Nathan hesitated for a couple of seconds before speaking again. "We need to tell Director Andre personally about our situation. Can you take us to meet him?" "Director Andre?" One auror looked at Nathan in surprise. "You can't just meet the director. Since you're here for help, you need to tell us the whole story first. Only then can we consider whether to report to the director." "No, we must meet the director in person. What we encountered is almost unimaginable, and you wouldn't believe me if I told you. Please, I beg you." Nathan's emotions surged, and he even cried, almost kneeling. They knew Jimmy was still covering for them, and any delay could have dire consequences. Seeing Nathan's emotional plea, one auror glanced tentatively at his companion, who nodded silently. The message was clear. They should help these two without causing them further distress. "All right," the questioning auror agreed with a smile. "You're in luck today. Director Andre is here for a business meeting with some prominent figures in the wizarding world and hasn't left the ministry yet. I'll go inform him. Follow me." Thank you both. You're very kind." Nathan expressed his gratitude and hurriedly followed. When they arrived outside the office of the Director of Legal Enforcement, the auror instructed them to wait outside and then entered the office. Although Bob and Nathan were anxious, they knew they had to be patient and wait quietly. End of this chapter. Chapter 578. Thank you, Your Excellency Wilson. After a short while, the auror returned with good news for Nathan and Bob. Director Andre was willing to meet them. As Nathan walked into the office, feeling hesitant, he noticed that besides Director Andre, there were two other individuals present. One was a middle-aged wizard, and the other was a handsome young man. Both were dressed elegantly, exuding an air of wealth and status. Is it true that you have urgent matters to discuss with me? Andre asked Nathan in a soft tone, not letting their disheveled appearance affect his demeanor. Yes, Director Andre, we have something important to report, but... Nathan glanced nervously at the two men beside Andre. This matter is very sensitive. It would be best to discuss it privately. Privately? Andre gave Nathan an amused look before chuckling. No need to worry. These gentlemen are Mr. Wilson, head of the British Silver Flash Trading Company, and Mr. Edmund, the patriarch of the T family. They have a strong cooperative relationship with the Ministry of Magic. There is nothing to hide from them. Nathan exchanged a glance with Bob and then nodded firmly. All right, the situation is as follows. Bob and I work in 2 magical animal breeding parks. Nathan proceeded to recount their recent experiences, detailing the connection between the breeding parks and the Silver Spears, the activities of the Silver Spears in the prison, and the nefarious dealings between the Silver Spears, the club, and certain non-governmental organizations. He even implicated some individuals within the Ministry of Magic. What? Andre's face turned red with anger after hearing their account. Do you realize the gravity of your accusations? You are accusing the Ministry of Magic of colluding with criminal groups and plotting to divide the country. Everything we said is true. Nathan's face was flushed with excitement. There are still hundreds of people imprisoned in that facility, most of them civilian wizards, squibs, and muggles. The Silver Spears are brainwashing them using inhumane methods. They are all witnesses. Kidnapping hundreds of people at once? Why haven't I heard of so many people going missing? Andre asked, still skeptical. Those of us working in the park are required to stay there for at least 6 months at a time. Our families think we are just on business trips, so it's normal that no one has reported us missing, Bob explained calmly. Andre pondered for a moment before turning to Edmund. Edmund, what do you make of their story? Do you find it credible? Some of what they said aligns with our previous intelligence. We had an insider in the club who reported that the Silver Spears had established a large breeding base in Germany. However, when we tried to follow up, our insider disappeared, which matches Nathan's account, Edmund replied, maintaining a composed demeanor. Is this related to the operation you informed me about earlier? Andre asked, his expression slightly stiff. I didn't expect that, after fighting the Silver Spears for so many years, they would infiltrate the Ministry of Magic without our knowledge. What a failure. As Andre and Edmund exchanged information, Nathan and Bob began to understand the gravity of the situation. It became clear that their revelations were part of a much larger and more complex issue. The 2 adults standing before them were the very ones who had forced the club to flee in haste. This alone proved they had found the right people. Nathan couldn't help but glance at Bob excitedly, and they both saw a glimmer of hope in each other's eyes. Andre's slightly rough acting skills did not arouse any suspicion. On the contrary, Nathan looked at him expectantly. Master Andre, it must be as you say. The Silver Spears have always claimed there are traitors among the wizards in their cooperation, which is why they were so anxious to transfer and imprison everyone, Nathan said. So that's how it is. Andre sighed, a slight frown on his face. It seems our original scion was too hasty. I'm afraid it was the spies within the Ministry of Magic who revealed our intentions to the club. Andre looked at Nathan and Bob apologetically. So, you have encountered such a catastrophe, and it is partly our fault. Our mistakes have troubled you. I am truly sorry. No, please don't say that, Nathan responded, waving his hands in panic. If it weren't for this, we might still be living in the club's carefully woven lies. We would never be able to wash away our sins. Yes, Director Andre, Bob added emotionally. The Silver Spears have never regarded us as anything more than dispensable tools. And the most important thing is that our companions are still in their hands. Well, without further ado, those innocent people must be rescued quickly, Andre said, his expression turning solemn. But then he hesitated slightly. But you escaped through the fireplace, and we need the cooperation of the Department of Magical Transportation to inquire about the Flu Network's trajectory. The Department of Magical Transportation has always supported the split bill. There is no guarantee that there are no spies from the club within the department. Bob and Nathan were shocked by his words. They didn't know where they had been before, nor did they know the flu password to the prison. To find out where they had come to the Ministry of Magic, they would need to get past the Secretary of Magical Transport. Given that the flu network was the first to split the two regions of East and West Germany, it was likely that this department had already been infiltrated by the club. Director Andre, perhaps I can help with this, Anduin interrupted, seeing everyone frowning. Although I don't know much about the flu network, as an alchemist, I might be able to deduce where they came from by examining the fireplace in the Ministry of Magic. Nathan and Bob were overjoyed at his words, and even Andre looked excited. Yes, I had forgotten about you, Sir Wilson. As the head of Silver Flash Trading Company and the most outstanding contemporary alchemist, the flu network will surely not trouble you. It would be great to have your help. You're welcome, Anduin replied with a slight smile, then looked at Nathan and Bob. Although I'm not German, I sympathize with your situation. It would be my pleasure to help. Thank you, Your Excellency Wilson. As long as you can help our comrades escape their suffering, I, Nathan, will do anything for you. Nathan said eagerly, looking at Anduin as if he were a messiah. If you want to thank Your Excellency Wilson, do so after your companions are safe. Andre said vigorously. There is no time to waste. Every minute of delay puts those hostages in greater danger. With that, Andre turned and led the way. He turned his head to look at the Auror who had come to report the news. Immediately send an urgent notice to Auror Squads number 1 to 4. Inform them that there is an important operation requiring their immediate presence. Then he looked at Edmund beside him. Mr. Schmidt, because the identities of these wizards are somewhat sensitive, I don't trust other departments within the ministry right now. I'm afraid I still need your help. If we can rescue them from that prison, can you provide a place to house them? Sending them home directly might pose safety risks. Are you worried that some people might be silenced once they react? Edmund nodded thoughtfully. No problem. I will notify my family to vacate a manor immediately. The senior officials of the Ministry of Magic are also to blame for such a significant oversight. I will report this to the other counselors as soon as possible. Having said that, Edmund turned to Nathan and Bob. I will have someone take you to my manor to rest. Take care of your health. You both may need to be questioned by the council in the future. Seeing that these two influential men had arranged everything properly, Nathan and Bob both showed expressions of relief. However, Nathan still spoke resolutely. My lords, may I return to the pit? Risen with you. I can continue to fight. One of my companions may be suffering to cover our escape today. Are you sure? Edmund looked at Nathan with some surprise. After receiving Nathan's affirmative nod, Bob also resolutely spoke up, ready to go together. It's not impossible, but only one of you can go, Andre said decisively. You must understand that you are direct witnesses to this incident. It would be unwise for both of you to take risks simultaneously. One of you must stay behind to receive Auror protection. Andre's words were clear. At least one witness must be kept alive. Nathan and Bob realized they might have been involved in a significant case. Otherwise, Director Andre wouldn't be so cautious. But Nathan was still worried about Jimmy and couldn't think of anything else at the moment. He immediately agreed, expressing his willingness to act with the main group and let Bob retreat to the rear. Note, this chapter is posted in advance. I will be busy with Qingming tomorrow, so I might not be able to publish on time. End of this chapter. Chapter 579, Containment. Under the self-direction and self-acting of Andre and his team, they successfully closed the logical loop of the kidnapping the Silver Spear, convincing both Nathan and Bob. Consequently, the follow-up actions proceeded smoothly. After some pretentious research in front of the Ministry of Magic's fireplace, Anduin pinpointed the exact location of the warehouse prison. Immediately afterward, Andre demonstrated what it means to be a hero. Leading Edmund, Anduin, and Nathan, he launched a counterattack on the prison. In front of hundreds of captured wizards and muggles, with Moody playing the role of the Silver Spear's leader, a fierce battle ensued. The clash was spectacular, with all kinds of spells colliding fiercely. Regardless of their actual power, the visual effect was stunning. When Andre used a unique, wind-calling curse to blow away all the silver spears, Moody and the others followed the plan and fled, maintaining an invincible posture. Deafening cheers erupted in the prison. Even the cooperating wizards were ecstatic, as the Silver Spear's actions during the day had shown they were ready to abandon everyone without any sympathy. With the liberation of the warehouse prison, the civilian wizards who had been imprisoned for so long finally regained their freedom. It was only then that they learned it was Nathan and Bob who had orchestrated this feat. Nathan was hailed as a hero. However, when Nathan saw that Jimmy, whom he had always cared about, was safe, he reverted to his honest and humble self, giving the credit for the rescue to Andre, Edmund, and Anduin. Naturally, the civilian wizards were generous with their praise, expressing sincere thanks to Andre and the other Ministry of Magic personnel. However, when Andre organized the evacuation and announced that the prisoners would be temporarily placed in the Schmidt family manor, many were puzzled. After enduring such hardships, their primary desire was to return to their families. They had suffered inhuman treatment, both mentally and physically. Initially, many people reacted to their rescue by sitting on the ground and crying, looking worse than children. But Nathan's presence proved beneficial. He stepped forward and exposed the conspiracy of the Silver Spear colluding with some Ministry of Magic personnel. He explained that if they didn't accept temporary shelter, they might be retaliated against and silenced by those villains, potentially endangering their families. Nathan's analysis made everyone realize the gravity of the situation. During their imprisonment, they had learned many secrets related to the club, including its conspiracy to use civil society to split the country. The cooperative wizards imprisoned with them hadn't bothered to hide these secrets. Edmund promised to take good care of everyone and not restrict their contact with the outside world, which reassured most of the prisoners. However, the cooperating wizards in the crowd were quite dissatisfied. Although the Auror's rescue had saved them from becoming walking dead, they knew they might transition seamlessly from being prisoners of the club to being criminals in the eyes of the Ministry of Magic. But no one paid attention to their opinions. In fact, the protests of these cooperating wizards only fueled the resolve of the civilian wizards who had been rescued. The group, initially hesitant, became more resolute in accepting the containment order. How? Should they be released on site to escape legal sanctions or return to the club? No way. They decided to act in unison, ensuring these wrongdoers would be caught and brought to justice, thus alleviating the hatred in their hearts. When they were in prison, didn't they mock us? This time, let them taste the bitterness of public criticism. Just as everyone finalized the next steps, a figure suddenly emerged from the crowd and shouted, "I have important information about the Silver Spear. I used to be a high-level partner and know many club secrets. I am willing to be a tainted witness for the Law N4 Cement Division." Everyone froze upon hearing this and then scrutinized the speaker. Like the other criminals, this man was dressed shabbily and looked very old, resembling a beggar one might see on the roadside. Anduin immediately recognized him and was pleased. Wasn't this Claremont? Although this old guy was the highest-ranking collaborator in the club, he always kept his cards close to his chest and was never truly loyal. Seeing Andre and others, he likely realized Pete's faction was about to fall, and the Silver Spears had completely lost trust in him. So, he decided to sell them out. Andre also recognized Claremont. After all, he was present when Claremont made a fraudulent confession before, so he roughly guessed his intentions. Generously, he said, "No problem. As long as the information you provide is valid and valuable, it may offset the crimes you have committed." Upon hearing Andre's promise, it wasn't Claremont who reacted first, but the other cooperating wizards. Learning there was still a possibility of redemption, they saw no shame in betraying their former employer. After Moody's earlier performance, they had no loyalty left to the club and desperately yelled at Andre and the other Aurors, trying to become tainted witnesses. Seeing this, Andre and the others couldn't help but be amused. They also wondered what Moody had done to make these people turn against each other so eagerly. However, with the Silver Spear already on the verge of collapse, Andre and Anduin didn't mind adding fuel to the fire. After a brief eye contact, they immediately responded to everyone's request. The main task now was to get them out of prison and put them in place. Moody seemed to have taken a liking to playing the villain, being particularly ruthless with these people. Due to the nourishment of magic, wizards are generally much stronger than normal people. Yet the group before them looked sallow and emaciated, with many showing symptoms of illness due to extremely poor hygiene conditions. Anduin and others also discovered the 10 cooperative wizards who had been brainwashed into fools. To be honest, even Anduin didn't expect Moody's methods to be so cruel. Originally, he intended to draw 2 or 3 people to pretend to be brainwashed. Instead, Moody doubled the number and publicly executed them, using methods even more brutal than real villains. This scene made Anduin uneasy, wondering if Moody had developed some strange hobby. Therefore, Andre and Edmund took extra care in containing these people. They first transferred everyone to the Schmidt family manor in batches. Ordinary civilian wizards and muggles were transferred directly through the Flu network, while cooperative wizards were taken away in batches by aurors using apparition to prevent them from absconding. It took nearly 2 hours just to transport them, and after arriving at the Schmidt family manor, the formal containment work had just begun. The first task was to clean everyone up, have them change into clean clothes, and check their health status. Those who were ill were moved to a specially designated medical area for recuperation. The healthier individuals were arranged to rest in multi-person rooms in batches, and sufficient, nutritious food was prepared for them. These people had been imprisoned for so long, subsisting on a monotonous diet, leading to severe nutritional imbalances. Additionally, the cooperating wizards had to be contained separately. As suspects, they required constant supervision to prevent any trouble. Fortunately, Anduin and his team had prepared well in advance. They had ample supplies of food, daily necessities, medicines, and other materials, avoiding any resource shortages. Edmund also demonstrated absolute sincerity this time. Not only did he cooperate with them earlier, but he also offered the largest manor in the family for their use. Although the manor was quickly filled with hundreds of people, it provided a much-needed refuge compared to the filthy prison they had come from. The Schmidt family manor was like a paradise in comparison. In terms of personnel, the dozens of aurors from the law enforcement department were insufficient to care for and detain so many people. Therefore, Edmund summoned a large number of people from the Schmidt family, including several house elves, members of the vassal family, and direct family members. Additionally, Edmund contacted several other wizarding families with seats in the Wizengamot. These families usually aligned with the Schmidt family politically and could be trusted. Edmund aimed to confirm their positions in this incident and borrow some of their people to help. Despite some initial confusion in arranging these personnel, everyone was eventually settled smoothly. At this time, Andre and Anduin entered the hall on the first floor, which had been set up as a cafeteria. They scanned the wizards, who looked like refugees, devouring the rich food voraciously. Among them, they found their target, Claremont. Claremont no longer resembled the decadent old man from the prison. He looked energetic and was even more vigorous than the younger people in grabbing food. End of this chapter. Chapter 580, Smart People. Just as I expected, this old man has been playing against Moody all along, Anduin sneered, turning to look at Andre beside him. It's time for us to have a showdown with him. Andre nodded. Given the current situation, cooperating with us is his only choice. I think Claremont knows what to do. After Andre finished speaking, he stepped forward and interrupted Claremont's meal, dragging him to an empty room in the manor, regardless of whether Claremont was willing or not. To be honest, Claremont was feeling a bit nervous. He thought Andre had summoned him to ask for details about the Silver Spear. After all, he had boasted in prison, claiming to know many club secrets. But the problem was that although he knew many details, even about Pete being the Golden Snidget, he had signed an extremely strict confidentiality contract with the club. There was a lot of information he couldn't reveal. Even the memories that could serve as evidence had been given to the Golden Snidget, and they would surely destroy these materials. Given this, it was hard to say whether he still held any value in the eyes of Andre and the others. But to his surprise, After calling him to the private room, Andre didn't question him for any information. Instead, he patted a large, familiar box in front of him. "I think you are familiar with these things, right?" Andre looked at Claremont with a teasing smile, gesturing to the big box. "Don't just stand there. Take a look at your masterpiece." This is impossible." Claremont stared at the wooden box in front of him, dumbfounded. As if to confirm something, he threw himself in front of the box and lifted the lid with trembling hands. Sure enough, inside the box were the memories of the club that he had worked so hard to preserve over the years. Impossible. Claremont looked at the memory bottles in the box with a conflicted expression, then glanced at Andre. "I only mentioned these things to the Golden Snidget. How did you get them? Could it be?" As Claremont connected everything that had happened, he seemed to understand. Could it be that the so-called spies, the transfer zone, and the prison were all a scam to trick him into revealing these as evidences? To give the club a bottom line? Thinking of this, Claremont realized why the Golden Snidget's sudden attack had felt so strange. Even if the club wanted to clean up and investigate spies, they wouldn't suspect him, a senior collaborator. After all, his brain had been cursed. Even if he wanted to be a spy, he couldn't say anything. It's a pity that when he faced the Golden Snidget, he was completely frightened and couldn't think clearly. He had been secretly collecting these memories for years, so he was taken advantage of. In other words, the club might still be unaware of what had happened, thinking that several people in the park had mysteriously disappeared. Claremont took a deep look at Andre. He hadn't expected that the director of the Department of Legal Enforcement, who usually behaved so upright, could be such a cunning villain behind the scenes, using all sorts of tricks. Even though he vaguely understood the truth, he didn't dare to say it out loud, even if they were alone. Because no matter what the facts were, the incident had already been set in stone. In the hearts of those hundreds of wizards, it was the Silver Spear that caused all this, and it was their conspiracy to split the country. But the most ironic part was, the thing is, most of what the civilian wizards believe is true. Claremont can't just come out and say that although the Silver Spear is indeed plotting to split Germany and using civil groups to sow discord, it hasn't actually kidnapped anyone, right? If he dared to say that, not only would those wizards not believe him, but they might also beat him to death in anger. And the box of memories in front of him is solid evidence. With these, it may only be a matter of time before Pete and his cronies are cleared from the Ministry of Magic. After thinking through all his Claremont realized that he had no way out, and the truth of the matter was no longer important. All he could do now was to seek a chance for himself. After pondering for a while, Claremont let out a long sigh and looked at the rough-faced man in front of him with a dejected expression. "Tell me what you need me to do, and I will definitely cooperate with you," Claremont said. "It seems that what he said is right. You are indeed a smart person." Andre nodded with satisfaction. "From now on, your identity is to accept the arrangement of our legal enforcement department and infiltrate the Silver Spear. And these things," Andre pointed to the box of memories in front of him. "This is the evidence you carefully collected for us to complete the mission. Next, you will be questioned by the Wizengamot. I think you understand what you should say." "So that's it, I understand." Seeing that Andre had arranged everything, Claremont knew he could only accept his role as a pawn. However, he still looked at Andre eagerly. "Then what about my future? I don't have any other requirements. I just want to live a good life." Andre couldn't help but glance at him contemptuously. "Humph, I know. Otherwise, you wouldn't have collected so many good things. Don't worry, I'm not like Pete. I don't believe in killing the donkey after it has done its work. As long as you cooperate well, there will be no problem keeping you safe for the rest of your life. However, everything you have obtained through the club for profit over the years, whether it is a magic supply store or those black markets, will not be returned to you. I hope you are prepared for that." After hearing what Andre said, Claremont didn't feel that the conditions were harsh. Instead, he let out a sigh of relief. If the other party had promised to restore his identity, Claremont might have suspected that Andre was lying. Depriving him of all his property allowed him to be sure of Andre's sincerity. "No problem, I can dedicate everything to you. But from now on, Pete." Claremont just wanted to say Pete's name, but the contract in his mind suddenly activated, preventing him from doing so. He had to change his title and say, "From now on, that person and the club behind him will definitely hate me to the bone. I just hope you can take pity on me and at least let me spend the rest of my life in peace." "Oh, are you so afraid of death?" Andre looked at him mockingly. "Okay, I promise you, as long as you cooperate well, I will arrange a new identity for you to live in seclusion. But this time, the club and Pete may not be so easy to deal with. Whether they can survive is another matter. I don't know how much you know about the club, but their strength is not as simple as it seems, especially the personal strength of individual wizards," Claremont said, restricted by the contract from saying too much. "Personal strength? I know. When I killed that phoenix, I already experienced her skill, so you don't need to worry about it," Andre said confidently. With Anduin and Moody by his side and the club's arm broken just now, he was not afraid of their counterattack. "What? You have already killed her?" Claremont stared at Andre, dumbfounded. He had a very detailed understanding of the club. The Phoenix was a real big shot in the organization. Silver Spear. It is said that his status was not even inferior to Jin Fascia himself. In the end, did he really die so silently? Thinking of Claremont, he couldn't help but tremble all over. This director Andre in front of him was even more terrifying than he had imagined. Not only were his methods superb, but his strength was also unfathomable. Realizing this, Claremont flattered him, trembling. "With a figure like you in the German magic world, those young people in the club don't stand a chance against you." "Stop talking nonsense," Andre interrupted, seeing that Claremont had completely surrendered. He took out a document and threw it in front of him with satisfaction. "This is your identity package. It clearly records what to say and what to do. I will arrange a single room for you. You should familiarize yourself with it. Do you understand?" "Yes, Lord Andre," Claremont replied, picking up the document in fear. He was then led by Andre into a closed single room. After dealing with Claremont, Andre took out a piece of parchment rather helplessly and ticked off one of the lines at the end. "Handling the matters Anduin explained is really troublesome. This kid really doesn't understand how to make things easier for an old man like me. Let me see. The next task is to interview reporters from the Goblin Herald and other media. Do I really have to report those embarrassing press releases?" Andre sighed helplessly, but still carried out the tasks on his calendar one by one. That night, a huge storm affecting the entire German Ministry of Magic was quietly brewing. Meanwhile, Pete, who was involved in this incident, was still in his residence, immersed in a sweet dream. Until the next morning, Pete was awakened by a loud knock on the door. When he opened the door, half asleep, he found Michelle, the director of the Department of Magical Accidents and Disasters, who was also known as the Poison Leopard in the club. Michelle was clutching a newspaper and pounding on the door anxiously. Seeing Pete open the door, Michelle hurriedly shouted, "Something happened! Something happened to the club!" End of this chapter.